The Great Expanse, 474 Reasons Why I Believe the Earth, Our Realm, is Flat. By Reverend Thomas Perez. Preface. This video is a small outline pertaining to a study I wrote entitled The Pale Blue Dot. It is a series of chapters pertaining to the Flat Earth model. The study was written in 21 chapters so far. As of the making of this video, it is an unfinished project. The unfinished part will contain questions and answers only. Obviously, they are not included in this video. Nevertheless, I wanted to share by means of video content what I have written so far. Everything from the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, the stars, flight paths, circumnavigations, space, measurements, light and history, etc., is covered in the study. I even provided pictures and physics. Also, included in the description box of this video is a link pertaining to my bibliography of works cited, which numbers up to 703 reliable citations so far. In short, I wanted to provide this small outline, which pretty much breaks down my entire 21-chapter series, for memorization purposes. However, I believe reading all 21 chapters in its entirety is necessary and will prove to be more beneficial to the studious individual due to its detailing research, questions, numerous videos, photos, observational findings and expose of what mainstream calls empirical evidence as provided by scientific communities and various space agencies like NASA today. This outline does not even begin to cover everything conducted in my series and chapters. However, I did my best to provide the reader with a simple general overlay pertaining to some of its pertinent facts. See the following flat Earth map on the right, which illustrates the areas of land beyond the ice wall. See link to my entire study series located on my website in the description box below. Introduction. 1. Mainstream pseudoscience insists that a spherical Earth was proven by Eratosthenes, circa 278 to 194 BC, and by Columbus, 1451 to 1506, Magellan, 1480 to 1521, and even Dante Alighieri, 1265 to 1321. However, the Chinese astronomer's book called the Huinanzi in the 2nd century BC inverted Eratosthenes' calculation of the curvature of the Earth to calculate the height of the Sun above the Earth instead, by asserting that the Earth was flat, and the Sun was 100,000 miles away. Ming China, 1368 to 1644, was also in agreement with the Huinanzi, upholding the flat circular Earth model. Using simple proportions, Eratosthenes concluded that 7.2 degrees over 360 degrees equals 800 kilometers over an unknown number. 7.2 degrees is 1/50th of 360 degrees. 800 kilometers times 50 equals 40,000 kilometers. The unknown number was solved for the size and circumference of the Earth. The Earth is supposedly 40,075 kilometers. Since there are 360 degrees in a circle, 7.2 degrees is 1/50th of an entire circle. So, the span between Syene and Alexandria corresponds to 1/50th of the way all the way around the Earth. According to mainstream, Eratosthenes was only off by 75 kilometers. He also concluded that the greater the curvature, the greater the length of a shadow. He believed the Sun, being so far away when shining, will always cast rays parallel to the Earth. Parallel rays are said to cast shadows at different lengths when placed at different angles. However, the numerical 360 degrees is somewhat elusive. It is like trying to grab water. Since 360 degrees is 180 degrees twice, and since pi symbol, radians is 3.14 of 180 degrees twice, 360 degrees, pi, and their numbers are irrational, but workable, meaning that in decimal form, pi never ends, like 0.999, nor does it become repetitive, like 1/3 equals 0.333. Pi is fixed, but yet never-ending. As of 2019, Google confirmed it was able to compute pi to 31.4 trillion decimal places, setting a new Guinness World Record. The argument I am presenting here can be said for all circles. All circles, regardless of their relative sizes, will always equal 3.14. The Earth is said to be 40,075 kilometers in circumference, but this number is based upon a 360-degree standard model for circular spheres. Its pi's are infinite. Keeping an infinite pi in mind, what if we were to take a page out Eratosthenes' assumption of a faraway sun and shrink it down to a small local heated light source orbiting a much larger Earth, like we see with our naked eye? What if we were to reject the coincidences that during a solar, or lunar eclipse, the sun and moon appear to be the same size due to their relative distances from each other as an absurdity of measurement? To reject their distances in relation to one another in favor of a small local sun and moon, both of them the same size, in which they instead orbit the face of our clock, the Earth, a much larger Earth. After all, it was the ancient Egyptians and Babylonians that gave us the face of our clock, through their dividing of days and based 60 numerical values. The following GIF is an illustration of the non-rotating flat Earth model. The case for a larger Earth and its simple alternate math actually exists. Various ancient Chinese documents reveal this alternate fact. Documents and books, including the Guanzi, the classic of mountains and seas, Shanhai Jing, the springs and autumns of Master Lu Shichuanxiu, and the Huainanzi, reveal a very different method of calculation for the dimensions of the Earth in regard to ratios and properties of similar triangles. Most people have never heard of Guanzi, Huainanzi, Lu Shichuanxiu, etc., much less their inverted calculations of a spherical Earth. A working mathematical alternative in cooperation with that of the Asian calculation can be produced, while confirming Eratosthenes' 500-mile distance between Syene, Alexandria, Styx, temple columns and their shadows, or lack thereof, observations. Assuming that the Earth is much larger and flat with an orbiting sun and moon, and knowing that radius is from the center of a circle to its edge while diameter is edge to edge through the radius, hence becoming twice its length, we can conclude that a 7 degrees 12 minutes makes a sweep of 1/25 of the flat Earth's total longitude from 90 degrees north to 90 degrees south, radius. Therefore, we can take the distance of 500 miles, multiply by 25, and find that the radius of the flat Earth is 12,500 miles. Doubling that figure for the diameter, we get a figure of 25,000 miles. The Earth is physically much larger, of course. A circle with a diameter of 25,000 miles across is simply the area of land which the light of an orbiting local sun affects, and represents the area of our known world. 2. Later, the likes of Nicholas Copernicus, 1473 to 1543, Johannes Kepler, 1571 to 1630, Tycho Brahe, 1546 to 1601, Sir Isaac Newton, 1643 to 1727, Albert Einstein, 1879 to 1955, and the more recent, the late Stephen Hawking, 1942 to 2018, were born. Their influence within the scientific community would shape the world. However, their influence would not have shaped the world if it was not for the printing press, invented between 1440 to 1450 AD. Printing in northern China was further advanced by the 11th century. As it was utilized by the Song dynasty, scientist and statesman Shen Kuo, 1031 to 1095, and the common artisan by Sheng, 990 to 1051, invented ceramic movable type printing. Hence, various publications were influencing the masses to either agree or disagree with the flat or spherical Earth models. 3. The spherical Earth model was often challenged, one way or another. Guoshojing challenged it in the 17th century. Johann Adam Schall von Bell, 1591 to 1666, was so impressed with the preserved astronomical instruments of Guo that he called him the Tycho Brahe of China. However, that challenge has become more of a debate today between globe heliocentric and flat geocentric circular Earthers of today. The Tychonian system of a geocentric Earth came to an end in the 1800s, via parallax and stellar aberrations. More on this later in Chapter 2. See the following GIF illustration of how easily a flat Earth is converted into a globe and vice versa. During the so-called Enlightenment era, many began to question the shape of the Earth and its position relative to its neighboring celestial bodies, including the Sun and the Moon. This re-emergence began in the 1800s, and is growing every day due to inconsistencies in parallax and aberrations, which are both proven to be faulty. 5. the growth of this re-emergence is mostly due in part to personal observation and research. Observations that became a reality for many through Arctic ship voyages across entire oceans. Moreover, many today are able to observe the Earth, celestial bodies, and stars for themselves. This time, however, it is not the observational word of a scientist or physicist that one is listening to or looking through. Instead, it is from the observances of what they see through their own naked eyes, empowered even more so in this day and age by technology. 6. This is precisely the reason why many are questioning the standard model of the Earth, Sun, Moon, planets, wandering stars, and fixed stars today. Many even question the universe itself. Couple this with those who began to re-examine the standard model of the Earth in the 1800s, we now have a movement. And since the movement exists, we must now re-evaluate these things. See the following GIF. From Chapter 1, Pythagoras, Ptolemy, Copernicus, Kepler, Tycho, and Newton. Standing the test of time. 7. According to mainstream, the spherical Earth model fits well into the Pythagorean theorem. This is a faulty assumption, since Pythagoras' contemporary, Hippasus, proved that mathematics can be altered to suit one's hypothesis or to further enhance a theorem and equation, or to simply destroy it. Mathematical laws can indeed change. Nothing is absolute, something that French philosopher, astronomer and mathematician René Descartes would discuss in his own treatise La Géométrie, 1637, a short tract included with the anonymously published Discourse on Method. 8. It is doubtful whether Pythagoras was really a mathematician as we understand the word. In fact, although genuine mathematical investigations were undertaken by later Pythagoreans, the evidence suggests that Pythagoras was a mystic who believed that numbers underlie everything. He worked out, for instance, that perfect musical intervals could be expressed by simple ratios. 9. However, in order to fix the problem of the theorem, and realizing that a non-right, or oblique, triangle has no right angles, another field was created called trigonometry. 10. According to spherical Earth adherents, the Earth curves every 8 inches per mile. When we apply the Pythagorean theorem with a bit of trigonometry to a globe model of the Earth, we will note that objects only appear to dip below the horizon 8 inches every 1 mile. But they can easily be brought back into view with a pair of binoculars or telescope. If an object went under the supposed curvature of the Earth, then one should not be able to bring said object back into view, unless the surface is flat. 11. The equation for this is m superscript 2 times 0.799364 equals d, or m superscript 2 times 8 equals d. 12. In reference to the location of the Earth, we have Claudius Ptolemy, a Greco-Roman mathematician, astronomer, geographer, astrologer, and poet. Although he was a spherical ball Earth believer, he was, nevertheless, a geocentric adherent, having believed that Earth was at the center of the universe, or its occupied space, and that it was the sun, moon, stars and planets that revolved around the Earth. This view held sway for 1,200 years, thanks to his treatise called the Almagest. Ptolemy contributed so much to the sciences, that his work is still looked upon in modern-day academics. See the following 2 charts. (13) The Almagest documents the ancient Greek mathematician Hipparchus' work. Hipparchus of Nicaea was a Greek astronomer, geographer and mathematician. He is considered the founder of trigonometry but is most famous for his incidental discovery of precession of the equinoxes. 14. Ptolemy's work, in all likelihood, might have been Hipparchus' mathematical formula for the geocentric system and stellar parallaxes, the measuring of stars by calculating their distances. 15. Hipparchus showed a clear mind and a dislike for unnecessarily complex hypotheses. He rejected not only all astrological teaching but also the heliocentric views of the universe. 16. Hipparchus's work is lost. What we know of it is from Ptolemy. 17. Ptolemy's version stood firm for 1,200 years until Copernicus. 18. Copernicus' sun-centered solar system worked at least as well as Ptolemy's spheres in explaining the apparent motion of the planets. Some of Copernicus's admirers argued that he had not really believed in a sun-centered universe but had merely proposed it as a convenience for calculating the motions of the planets. 19. However, according to NASA, Copernicus did not have the tools to prove his theories. By the 1600s, astronomers such as Galileo would develop the physics that would prove he was allegedly correct. But did it really prove anything? 20. Pointing his telescope toward Jupiter, Galileo, 1564 to 1642, discovered the 4 major moons of Jupiter and concluded that certain bodies, like Jupiter, had its own orbit around a body, independent of the Earth. If independent, then it is feasible that the Copernican theory is correct. Perhaps the Earth itself was an orbiting body, turning around a larger body, the Sun. 21. However, another brilliant astronomer, mathematician and nobleman, Tycho Brahe, 1546 to 1601, worked to combine what he saw as the geometrical benefits of the Copernican system with the philosophical benefits of the Ptolemaic system into his own model of the universe, the Tycho system. Hence, an Earth-centered system. See following equatorial plane illustrations. 22. The Tycho system was foreshadowed, in part, by that of Martian's Capella, 5th century AD, a prose writer and early developer of the liberal arts, who described a system in which Mercury and Venus are placed on epicycles around the Sun, which circles the Earth. Copernicus, who cited Capella's theory, even mentioned the possibility of an extension in which the other 3 of the 6 known planets would also circle the Sun. This was foreshadowed by the Irish Carolingian scholar Johannes Scotus Eriugena, 9th century AD, Irish theologian, Neoplatonist philosopher and poet, who went a step further than Capella by suggesting both Mars and Jupiter orbited the Sun as well. 23. Others followed and supported the Tycho system in the 15th century like Nilkantha Somyaji, an Indian astronomer of the Kerala School of Astronomy and Mathematics, who first presented a geo-heliocentric system where all the planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, orbit the Sun, which in turn orbits the Earth. 24. Tycho and Tychonian adherents said that planets moved in epicycles. Copernicus and Copernican followers said the same thing, that they moved around the Sun. The only difference was that Copernicus placed the Earth in these epicycles, with the Sun being stationary. Later, contemporary to Tycho, Johannes Kepler, 1571 to 1630, said that they moved in elliptical orbits, though the idea is one and the same. 25. The harmonic law was something that they, Pythagoras, Copernicus, Kepler and Newton, all wanted to achieve through divine mathematics. They wanted to synergistically bring math and the heavenly cosmos, the Earth, Sun, Moon, stars and planets, together as one. In them are the traits of Hermeticism, a philosophical religious belief coupled with what many saw as pseudoscience, as thought and practiced by the Pythagoreans. Kepler used the observations of Tycho himself to demonstrate that the orbits of the planets are ellipses and not circles, creating the modified Copernican system. However, the Tycho system remained very influential in the late 16th and 17th centuries. 26. Today the Almagest is a peer-reviewed academic journal that publishes contributions evaluating scientific developments. The Almagest addresses the philosophical assumptions behind scientific ideas and developments and the reciprocal influence between historical context and these phenomena. The journal is abstracted in the Philosophy Research Index, STEP, Science and Technology in the European Periphery. More on Hermeticism later in Chapter 20. See following Tychonic system illustration. 27. Newton was an English mathematician, astronomer, theologian, author and physicist. Besides his work on universal gravitation, gravity, more on this in Chapter 10, Newton developed the 3 laws of motion which form the basic principles of modern physics. His discovery of calculus led the way to more powerful methods of solving mathematical problems. But even in this, the Tycho system was still standing in competition with its Copernican counterpart. The Tycho system proved philosophically more intuitive than the Copernican system, as it reinforced common-sense notions of how the Sun and the planets are mobile while the Earth is not. The Tycho system was an acceptable alternative as it explained the observed phases of Venus with a static Earth. 28. however, a Copernican system would suggest the ability to observe stellar parallax, which would be observed in the 1800s. But to the Tychonian, parallaxes are due to heavenly motions fluid in the heavens, which could accommodate intersecting circles. Parallaxes lead to stellar aberration, discovered by James Bradley, 1693 to 1762, which proved, according to mainstream pseudoscientific data, that the Earth did in fact move around the Sun. This is when Tycho's system fell out of use. However, there are problems with stellar aberrations. More on this in Chapter 2. 29. However, in the modern era, some of the modern geocentric believers use a modified Tycho system with elliptical orbits, while rejecting the concept of relativity. They also challenge stellar aberration. So before you jump to conclusions pertaining to a heliocentric system, just remember its stronghold is only its ability to observe stellar aberrations. Without it, the system can fall. Moreover, if the system fails in its curvature of its Earth as demonstrated by the simple math in this chapter with modern-day technologies, then perhaps the Earth is a flat plane disk, with the Sun, Moon, stars and separate planetary, wandering stars, orbiting and circling above it. See the following illustration example of heavenly bodies moving about in their circular orbits. From Chapter 2, Stellar Parallaxes, Stellar Aberrations, and Geocentrism. 30. Stellar parallaxes and stellar aberrations are two different things. 31. Stellar parallaxes are apparent displacement, or difference in the apparent position, of an object, caused by actual change, or difference, of position from the point of observation, specifically. The angular amount of such displacement or difference of position, being the angle contained between the two straight lines drawn to the object from the two different points of view, and constituting a measure of the distance of the object. They are a star's apparent elliptical course around its true position as Earth supposedly orbits the Sun. 32. Aberration, and its light, causes objects to appear to be displaced towards the direction of motion of the observer compared to when the observer is stationary. The change in angle is typically very small, of the order of v/c, where c is the speed of light and v is the velocity of the observer. In the case of stellar or annual aberration, the apparent position of a star to an observer on Earth varies periodically over the course of a year. 33. Parallaxes, in short, is the effect whereby the position or direction of an object appears to differ when viewed from different positions, for example, through the viewfinder and the lens of a camera and/or the naked eye. Parallaxes are about an object's position and its traveling paths. 34. The etymological word comes from the Latin, to wander away, to go astray. 35. There are four types of aberrations. Annual aberration is due to the supposed orbital revolution of the Earth around the Sun. Planetary aberration is the combination of aberration and light time correction. Diurnal aberration is due to the supposed rotation of the Earth about its own so-called axis. Secular aberration is due to the motion of the Sun and solar system relative to other stars in our galaxy. 36. According to mainstream science, aberration is historically significant because of its role in the development of the theories of light, electromagnetism and, ultimately, the theory of special relativity. It was first observed in the late 1600s by astronomers searching for stellar parallax in order to confirm the heliocentric model of the solar system. However, it was not understood at the time to be a different phenomenon. 37. Their opportunity came in 1727, when James Bradley provided an explanation for stellar parallaxes in terms of the finite speed of light, r, c, for the speed of light and r, v, for the velocity of the observer, meaning we, according to pseudoscience, are moving too with the Earth also. See following quote by Albert Einstein. "38. Bradley's theory did not hold water with 19th-century theories of light. And because of this, aberration became a major motivation for the following four. 1. The ether, or as some would spell, or pronounce, it the ether, drag theories. 2. The Michelson-Morley experiment. 3. The ether theory of electromagnetism and 4. The theory of special relativity. 39. The ether, also called quintessence, is the material that fills the region of the universe above the terrestrial plane. The concept of the ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the traveling of light and gravity. 40. 19th-century physicists postulated that the ether permeated all throughout space, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum. 41. Evidence for the presence of such a medium was not found in the Michelson-Morley experiment, and this result has been interpreted as meaning that no such luminiferous ether exists. 42. Michelson-Morley experiment, an attempt to detect the velocity of the Earth with respect to the hypothetical luminiferous ether, a medium in space proposed to carry light waves. First performed in Germany in 1880 to 1881 by the physicist A. A. Michelson, the test was later refined in 1887 by Michelson and Edward W. Morley in the United States. 43. It was reasoned that, if the speed of light were constant with respect to the proposed ether through which the Earth was moving, that motion could be detected by comparing the speed of light in the direction of the Earth's motion and the speed of light at right angles to the Earth's motion. No difference was found. This null result seriously discredited the ether theories and ultimately led to the proposal by Albert Einstein in 1905 that the speed of light is a universal constant. 44. The ether theory of electromagnetism, in physics, is a theoretical universal substance believed during the 19th century to act as the medium for transmission of electromagnetic waves, for example, light and X-rays, similar to sound waves that are transmitted by elastic media, such as air. The ether was assumed to be weightless, transparent, frictionless, undetectable chemically or physically, and literally permeating all matter and space. See the following GIF command to proceed traveling through space. '45. The Michelson-Morley experiment, which was designed specifically to detect the motion of Earth through the ether, showed that there was no such effect. Ether theories were also used to explain gravity beginning in the 17th century, but they did not have the popularity of those explaining the propagation of light. 46. Due to the special theory of relativity by Albert Einstein in 1905 and its acceptance by scientists generally, the ether hypothesis was abandoned as being unnecessary in terms of Einstein's assumption that the speed of light or any electromagnetic wave is a universal constant. 47. Universal constant with reference to the speed of light is only one way of looking at a phenomenon. 48. Einstein did not deny the ether. Einstein said, "A more careful reflection teaches us not to deny ether. We may assume the existence of ether, only if we give up ascribing a definite state of motion to it. The ether of general theory of relativity is a medium which is itself devoid of all mechanical and kinematic qualities but helps to determine mechanical and electromagnetic events. I think that the ether of the general theory of relativity is the outcome of the Lorentzian ether through relativation. We may say that according to the general theory of relativity space is endowed with physical qualities, in this sense therefore, there exists an ether. Space without ether is unthinkable, for in such space there not only would be no propagation of light, but also no possibility of existence for standard of space and time, measuring rods and clocks, nor therefore any space-time intervals in the physical sense. 49. Dr. Adrian Svarti cites that there are several theories for this unknown force. Svarti doesn't deny the theory of special relativity, he simply states that it is an abstract. Moreover, Svarti states, interestingly enough, several explanations for the Sagnac experiment exist, based on alternatives to the theory of relativity, such as the emission theory or a more recent one, called the undulating theory, but none for the Michelson-Morley experiment. This may be due to the fact that the Michelson-Morley experiment is much more difficult to explain correctly, without twisting the facts. We must stress that the expressions c plus v and cv do not mean in any way that the speed of light can be subjected to Galilean speed transformations. 50. In other words, the simple math for observer and point of distance are the respective angles traveled by the two light fronts. See more physics math in Chapter 2 on my website, theultimatereconciliationist.com. 51. More recently, the Sagnac effect is being used in industrial applications for its incredible precision in calculating the frequency shift due to the Doppler effect, if we consider the physics in Chapter 2. 52. This analysis, physics of mathematics, is perfectly valid in both the classical and the relativistic contexts, both for phase and for frequency shift. 53. The physics in Chapter 2 applies to the Michelson-Morley experiment. As the light front travels away or towards the incoming interferometer, the following equations apply. See Chapter 2 for equations. 54. Moreover, by admitting the ether, Einstein was in support of Newton's work, Optics. According to Isaac Newton, in his book entitled Optics, written in 1704, light is transmitted at a finite speed by the luminiferous ether wind, which is the common or universal medium of propagation. 55. Considering what the authorities, both past and present, have said concerning stellar aberrations, mathematical formulas, equations, expressions, and the ether, let us ask a simple question. What if there was a wind, in a non-conventional fashion, in space, or for geocentric flat Earth believers, a wind within the dome or firmament, to support the ether theory as being one and the same? 56. There is, it is called, solar wind. Solar winds are streams of particles emitted from stars, including our sun. Space does not have an atmosphere like the way we think about air on Earth. But could this wind from the multitudes of stars that exist be what Einstein meant when he defended the ether? 57. But according to mainstream science, the ether has been disproven due to the universal constant pertaining to the speed of light. 58. However, light of different wavelengths, or colors, travels at different speeds when they travel through any medium other than a vacuum. 59. Red light travels faster than blue in glass. The invariance of the speed of light in all uniformly moving reference frames is a postulate of special relativity. It does not derive from special relativity, which only then states how observers will experience or measure space and time given the invariance of the speed of light. Similarly, the speed of light may not be constant, physicists say. Einstein's theory of special relativity sets the speed of light at 186,000 miles per second, 300 million meters per second. But some scientists are exploring the possibility that this cosmic speed limit changes. See following GIF of the Sun and Moon in circular orbits and proceeding in and out of their respective cycles above a flat Earth. To postulate is to suggest or assume the existence, fact, or truth of something as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or belief. 61. Mainstream science claims that you cannot use anything in your mobile phone or other device that determines rotational movement, as the Sagnac effect is not real if you believe in the ether. 62. In the most basic form, a cell phone is essentially a two-way radio, consisting of a radio transmitter and a radio receiver. When you chat with your friend on your cell phone, your phone converts your voice into an electrical signal, which is then transmitted via radio waves to the nearest cell tower. 63. It is revealed that 99% of all of our telecommunication devices are dependent upon signals transmitted through cables under the oceans, and not from various orbiting satellites above the Earth. This is precisely why we lose signals. 64. According to mainstream science, there are 8 reasons why we lose cell phone signals. And of them are due to obstructions getting in the way, like bad weather, clouds and cosmic activity, etc. 65. Underwater cabling systems are mentioned. It is not mentioned because typical ordinary sites would naturally assume that signals are coming from space because that is the consensus of the masses. But they are mistaken. Google underwater cables, and you will find many links telling us exactly how communication and our internet is achieved through our cell phones. Not once does the word satellite appears. 66. Mainstream pseudoscience claims that if you believe in the ether, against all evidence, then you would conclude the Earth was stationary, even though regular stellar aberration observations indicate that it is not stationary. See the Earth, Sun, Moon, wandering stars, and the solar system traveling at ridiculous speeds in the following GIF. Not true. The idea behind the ring laser gyroscope, RLG, and the more recent fiber optic gyroscope, FOG, actually dates back to 1913, when the French physicist, Georges Sagnac, experimented with rays of light moving in opposite directions around a circular cavity on a turntable. Sagnac showed that when he rotated the turntable, the light traveling with the rotation arrived at a target slightly after the light traveling against the rotation. He believed he had proven the existence of the ether in space. Sagnak's counter-rotating beams of light are analogous to beams in a linear cavity. If the turntable rotates clockwise, the beam traveling clockwise has farther to go to catch its starting point. The path of the counterclockwise beam is shorter. 68. Dr. Donohue's translation of Kepler's Deception was published in 1999 by Cambridge University Press. Dr. Donohue cites the Earth as stationary and geocentric, hence disproving Kepler and validating the Sagnac experiment. From Chapter 3, The Firmament/Dome. 69. As stated in number 55, what is the dome or firmament? 70. The Hebrew word for firmament comes from the word rakia, which means an expanse, a visible arch of the sky. The root word is raka, which means to overlay or expand. To cover, as in a dome. 71. All cultures throughout antiquity, even as recent as the 1800s, held to a universal concept of an enclosed dome, which in turn biblically backs up the Genesis account of what is referred to as the firmament. 72. The sun, moon, and stars are in it. 73. Disc-shaped planets are possible. The scientific community states that circular discs are formed during a planet's initial beginnings, and if all the properties are in place, only then can it become a larger disk with depths that vary in size. 74. When grains are mostly larger than 0.1 micrometers, the rotationally supported disks can become massive enough to be self-gravitating and evolve into rings. 75. According to mainstream pseudoscience, if the Earth was a disk, things will fall off. This is pretty silly since they are the ones advocating for gravity, which according to them, holds everything in place from flying out into space. If that is the case, a flat disk would even be easier to hold things in place, especially if there was a dome which encircles the Earth and proceeds to its end at the edges of the Earth, via its ice wall. An ice wall that encircles the Earth. Hence, we have a North Pole, but not a South Pole. More on this later in this outline. 76. There have been a number of Antarctic expeditions throughout history. 16 in pre-19th century history, 22 in the 19th century, 112 in the 20th century and 45 in the 21st century. Admiral Byrd conducted 4 in the 20th century. That's an incredible 195 expeditions. 77. Flat earthers have one thing in common, they all believe that the Earth is a flat disk. However, when, or how it was created, remains debatable within their camps. The question of space itself is also denied within their camps. Flat earthers have various theories concerning this denial. They claim that the universe is small and that this universe is not what we have been thought to believe. According to flat earthers, the discrepancies of stellar parallaxes explain this, as discussed in Chapter 3. The universe is encased within the dome. However, this theory does not explain expansion, as in the observational evidence that the universe is expanding. The stars all seem to be flying away from one another by the means of expansion. 78. Harvard University, Popular Mechanics, Earth Science, and so forth, along with many physicists today claim that the universe is not expanding. It is the Earth instead. Oxford claims the same thing. See the following GIF with reference to the flat Earth model for another GIF illustrative example. From Chapter 4, The Apollo Missions, Did We Really Go? Objection numbers 1, 2, and 3. 79. NASA faked the landings to avoid humiliation due to the Russians beating us through Sputnik on October 4, 1957, to keep Kennedy's promise of going to the moon before the 1960s decade ended and to ensure that it continued to get funding. NASA raised about $30 billion to go to the moon. Kaysing claimed in his book that this could have been used to pay off many people. Another reason was due to the Vietnam War. An unpopular war. Moon landings, they say, was a good distraction to many who had lost their faith in our country. It was a boost for morale, so to speak, for American pride. 80. Moreover, there were two notable events that took place: the 1969 Cold War. The Soviet submarine K-19 collides with the American submarine USS Gato in the Barents Sea. The 1969 Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975, with U.S. involvement in 1965. In Washington, D.C., 250,000 to 500,000 protesters staged a peaceful demonstration against the war, including a symbolic march against death. 81. There are 8 inconsistencies or objections pointing to the Apollo moon landings as being an elaborate hoax. Each inconsistency has its own subdivisions. Questions and subdivisions that persist and shout, forgery, and fake. They are as follows. 82. 1. Photography and film oddities. 2. Mechanical issues. 3. Transmissions. 4. Environment. 5. Missing data. 6. Technology. 7. Deaths of NASA personnel. 8. The alleged Stanley Kubrick involvement. The alleged Kubrick involvement is not covered here. It is covered in Chapter 11. See the following GIF from NASA. If you look carefully, you can see through the body of the astronaut. '83. Mainstream pseudoscience sites. According to James Longuski, professor of aeronautics and astronautics engineering at Purdue University, the conspiracy theories are impossible because of their size and complexity. The conspiracy would have to involve more than 400,000 people who worked on the Apollo project for nearly 10 years, the 12 men who walked on the moon, the 6 others who flew with them as command module pilots, and another 6 astronauts who orbited the moon. Hundreds of thousands of people, including astronauts, scientists, engineers, technicians, and skilled laborers, would have had to keep the secret. Longuski also argues that it would have been much easier to really land on the moon than to generate such a huge conspiracy to fake the landings. 84. My rebuttal, a rebuttal by Sibrel to this claim is that NASA had compartmentalized all of the work on the Apollo program. This would have allowed for only a small number of people to actually know the truth about faking the moon landings. In other words, only the upper echelons, so to speak, was in on it, while NASA's average worker was unaware of this. One only needs to watch the movie, Capricorn 1, to understand what Sibrel was talking about. 85. For extensive details on all the objections, see chapters 4 and 5 of my study series, The Pale Blue Dot, located on my website. For objection numbers 1, 2, and 3, see chapter 4. For objections 4, 5, 6, and 7, see chapter 5. All of which are located on my website. It is just too much to be included in this video outline. Note, the Apollo 11 mission of 1969 and the Apollo 14 mission of 1971 both have the same Earth cloud formations, even though the missions were 2 years apart. The fake ball Earth image in both images were superimposed. Or, both images are merely clever paintings. More on illusions later in Chapter 12. See pictures on the right. From Chapter 5, the Apollo missions, did we really go? Objection numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7. 86. For extensive details for objection numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7, see Chapter 5 located on my website. From Chapter 6, Satellites, the ISS and live stream video feeds. 87. Mainstream pseudoscience claims that they have all the satellite pictures and video streams one can ever ask for in reference to proof of a globe spherical Earth. 88. It is believed that there are 1,071 operational satellites in orbit around the Earth. There are more than 21,000 objects larger than 10 centimeters orbiting the Earth. Just a small fraction of these are operational satellites. It is estimated there are a further 500,000 bits and pieces between 1 and 10 centimeters in size. 89. Satellites appear to hang motionless in the sky. The fact that they remain over the geographic same area means they provide the perfect platform for telecommunications, broadcast, or weather observations. 90. The International Space Station, ISS, is another orbiting object as well. 91. There are 5 main layers to our atmosphere. Working our way up from ground level we have, the troposphere 0 to 25 kilometers, 0 to 7 miles high, the stratosphere 25 to 50 kilometers, 7 to 31 miles high, the mesosphere 50 to 80 kilometers, 31 to 50 miles high, the thermosphere 80 to 700 kilometers, 50 to 440 miles high, and the exosphere 700 to 10,000 kilometers, 440 to 6,200 miles high. 92. The ISS orbits at 400 kilometers, that is 250 miles high. On a clear day, the ISS is easily visible to the naked eye from the ground. The ISS is in the thermosphere. 93. Others objects orbit higher at 20,000 kilometers, 12.427 miles high. Still yet others orbit even higher than that at 36,000 kilometers, 22.369 miles high. This height places them beyond the exosphere. 94. The top of the exosphere marks the line between the Earth's atmosphere and interplanetary space. The exosphere is the outermost layer of the Earth's atmosphere. But this is untrue, since scientists as of 2020 have now concluded that the Moon is in our atmosphere. See Chapter 18. See link in description box below on how they faked the SpaceX Tesla in space. 95. The thermosphere is the hottest layer in the atmosphere. 96. It is said that more than half of the satellites in orbit about the Earth are within the atmosphere. The two regions of the atmosphere in which satellites commonly orbit are the thermosphere and the exosphere. 97. Satellites are allegedly floating around the thermosphere where temperatures are claimed to be upwards of 4,530 degrees Fahrenheit. The metals used in satellites, however, such as aluminum, gold and titanium, have melting points of 1,221, 1,948 and 3,034 degrees respectively, all far lower than they could possibly handle. 98. The geostationary communications satellites was first created by Freemason science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke and supposedly became science fact just a decade later. Before this, radio, television, and navigation systems like LORAN and Decca were already well established and worked fine using only ground-based technologies. Nowadays huge fiber optic cables connect the internet across oceans, gigantic cell towers triangulate GPS signals, and ionospheric propagation allows radio waves to be bounced all without the aid of the science fiction bestseller known as satellites. 99. NASA claims there are upwards of 20,000 satellites floating around Earth's upper atmosphere sending us radio, television, GPS, and taking pictures of the planet. All these supposed satellite pictures, however, are admittedly composite images, edited in Photoshop. They claim to receive ribbons of imagery from satellites which must then be spliced together to create composite images of the Earth, all of which are clearly CGI and not photographs. If Earth were truly a ball with 20,000 satellites orbiting, it would be a simple matter to mount a camera and take some real photographs. The fact that no real satellite photographs of the supposed ball Earth exist in favor of NASA's ribbons of composite CG imagery is further proof we are not being told the truth. 100. And as mentioned prior, according to the New York Times, Newsweek and CNN, 99% of all of our transmissions come from under the oceans, and not from satellites in space. See also Chapter 7. Notation. The first picture on the right was supposedly taken by NASA's Landsat 8 satellite. The Landsat 8 orbits at around 428 miles, 705 kilometers, above Earth, 178 miles, 286 kilometers, above the ISS, but still inside the thermosphere. The site where the image is shown claims that the ISS is hidden in the clouds. In the clouds? If it is that low, shouldn't we see vapors of dissipating clouds, like fog, vanishing from its various lenses when on live video streaming? According to NASA, the second picture was taken by Expedition 47 flight engineer Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, who photographed rare, high-altitude noctilucent or night-shining clouds from the International Space Station on May 29, 2016. Polar mesospheric clouds, also known as noctilucent clouds, form between 76 to 85 kilometers, 47 to 53 miles, above the Earth's surface. According to mainstream pseudoscience, you should be able to detect it, the curvature, from an airplane at a cruising height of around 10,600 meters, 35,000 feet, but you need a fairly wide field of view, for example, 60 degrees, and a virtually cloud-free horizon. However, and this is most important, whenever we see a live video feed or picture from the ISS, even with a full body of clouds, it almost always shows, except if taking a picture of a satellite against a full frame of the Earth in the background on very rare occasions, a curved Earth. Moreover, If we are only able to see the curvature of the Earth beginning at an altitude of 35,000 feet, 6.629 miles, then how can the ISS display a non-curvature, flat plane, at 1,320,000 feet, 250 miles, in the second picture on the right? Perhaps they descended down a bit to snap the picture, and ascended back above? Impossible. Orbital objects simply do not go up or down. Doing that will defeat the purpose of an orbit. The ISS is in the same constant orbital altitude, day in and day out, year after year. However, according to NASA, each orbit takes 90 to 93 minutes, depending on the exact altitude of the ISS, that is 16 times a day in a 24-hour period. The ISS orbital altitude drops gradually over time due to the Earth's gravitational pull and atmospheric drag. Periodic reboosts adjust the ISS orbit. As the ISS orbital altitude decays, the orbit tracks on Earth change slightly. Moreover, Scott Kelly confirms this in a tweet on Twitter. Descent is due to what they call gravity. As we have observed, planes can travel at altitudes of 35,000 feet, 6.629 miles above. That places them at the highest point of the troposphere and just below the stratosphere. And not one single plane, pilot, co-pilot, or passenger ever took a snapshot of a curvature. More on the appearance of curvatures and flat planes in Chapter 8. However, let us be fair. When one watches NASA go live, we will quickly observe that the Earth appears to have a curvature. But this can be the result of cockpit window curvatures, fisheye lenses, or deliberate distortion. However, in support of a spherical Earth, it would be impossible to deliberately distort the Earth without distorting the ISS's solar panels that can be seen slightly overlapping the Earth. The only way possible for that reasoning to be feasible is to hang a model over the already curved image of the Earth on a green screen. We do this all the time in modern TV and motion picture blockbuster films like Star Wars, Gravity, and Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. More on this in Chapter 11. It may be possible that the ISS is not really above the Earth, orbiting at 250 miles above. However, if it is there, it should be of no concern to flat earthers, since the orbiting ISS is said to be within low Earth orbit. But if it is not at 250 miles above, then surely it is only at 47 to 53 miles above the Earth. That is exactly 248,160 to 279,840 feet above the Earth, and we still see no curvature. There are no astronauts aboard. When NASA, and other space agencies for that matter, cut to an interview of an astronaut on wires and in harnesses, the interview is done in a studio with a green or blue screen in the background. More on this later in Chapter 11. As of today, January 22, 2024, the ISS is allegedly still above at 248 miles, 400 kilometers. Therefore one cannot assume that the ISS descended to take those noctilucent clouds at 53 to 47 miles above. The two pictures on the right are your exterior and interior displays of the ISS, with Scott Kelly being interviewed by what appears to be a studio director, cameraman and sound woman. From Chapter 7, the Global Positioning System, GPS. 101. I do not deny the existence of orbiting global positional systems, I merely question and deny their applications upon an alleged ball Earth. 102. All GPS systems use trilateration as opposed to triangulation. The difference between the two is that trilateration involves the measuring of distances, whereas triangulation involves the measurement of angles. 103. As GPS satellites broadcast their location and time, trilateration measure distances to pinpoint their exact position on Earth. While surveyors use triangulation to measure distant points, GPS positioning does not involve any angles whatsoever. Moreover, through the measurement of distances, your precise GPS location can be determined. Yet several factors such as HDOP, PDOP, GDOP, and the atmosphere can affect GPS accuracy and error. 104. HDOP, geodency, is an acronym for horizontal dilution of precision. A measure of the geometric quality of a GPS satellite configuration in the sky. HDOP is a factor in determining the relative accuracy of a horizontal position. The smaller the DOP number, the better the geometry. 105. PDOP. Dilution of precision, DOP, or geometric dilution of precision, GDOP, is a term used in satellite navigation and geomatics engineering to specify the additional multiplicative effect of navigation satellite geometry on positional measurement precision. 106. Hence, PDOP is the position of DOP and can be thought of as 3D positioning or the means of the DOP. It is most often referred to in global positional systems. HDOP is horizontal of DOP, while VDOP is vertical of DOP. 107. GDOP, one satellite directly overhead with an abundance of additional satellites spaced evenly around the sky. 108. According to GS Geography, the Global Positioning System uses the World Geodetic System, WGS-84, as its reference coordinate system. It comprises a reference ellipsoid, a standard coordinate system, altitude data, and a geoid. 109. An ellipsoid is a spheroid, or ellipsoid of revolution, a quadric surface obtained by rotating an ellipse about one of its principal axes, in other words, an ellipsoid with two equal semidiameters. If the ellipse is rotated about its minor axis, the result is an oblate, flattened, spheroid, shaped like a lentil. 110. An ellipsoid is a surface that may be obtained from a sphere by deforming it by means of directional scaling, or more generally, of an affine transformation. An ellipsoid is a quadric surface, that is, a surface that may be defined as the zero set of a polynomial of degree 2 in 3 variables. 111. In the case of GPSs, ellipsoids must be achieved. Ellipsoids are shapes that are transformed into that of a flat or oblate surface area. 112. The main difference between an ellipsoid and ellipse is that the ellipsoid is a closed quadric surface that is a three-dimensional analog of an ellipse. An ellipse is a type of curve on a plane. 113. Directional scaling is, in Euclidean geometry, uniform scaling, or isotropic scaling. It is a linear transformation that enlarges, increases, or shrinks, diminishes, objects by a scale factor that is the same in all directions. 114. The key words here that one should pay close attention to are the words, transformation, directional scaling, increases, diminishes, shrinks, transformed, and deform or deforming. It would seem that any way you want to slice it, pun intended, the shape of a sphere must be altered in some fashion to conform to a flat or oblate plane, surface. 115. But exactly what do they mean by affine transformations? In short, affine transformations is a linear mapping method that preserves points, straight lines, and planes. Sets of parallel lines remain parallel after an affine transformation. 116. The affine transformation technique is typically used to correct geometric distortions or deformations that occur with non-ideal camera angles. For example, satellite imagery uses affine transformations to correct for wide-angle lens distortion, panorama stitching, and image registration. Transforming and fusing the images to a large flat coordinate system is desirable to eliminate distortion. This enables easier interactions and calculations that don't require accounting for image distortion. 117. A coordinate system is used to define a location on the Earth. It is created in association with a map projection, datum, and reference ellipsoid, and describes locations in terms of distances or angles from a fixed reference point. A datum is a fixed starting point of a scale or operation. An accurate datum is formed by which other machining operations can be carried out. 118. Altitude is a distance measurement, usually in the vertical or up direction, between a reference datum and a point or object. Although the term altitude is commonly used to mean the height above sea level of a location, in geography the term elevation is often preferred for this usage. Starting at a reference datum to a point or object, hence, starting above the Kármán line. 119. Is the Earth inertial, or a non-inertial frame of reference? While the laws of motion are the same in all inertial frames, in non-inertial frames, they vary from frame to frame depending on the acceleration. However, inertial forces are used in a fictitious manner. 120. In classical mechanics, it is often possible to explain the motion of bodies in non-inertial reference frames by introducing additional fictitious forces, also called inertial forces, pseudo-forces, and D'Alembert forces, to Newton's second law. Common examples of this include the Coriolis force and the centrifugal force. In general, the expression for any fictitious force can be derived from the acceleration of the non-inertial frame. As stated by Goodman and Warner, one might say that F equals ma holds in any coordinate system provided the term force is redefined to include the so-called reversed effective forces, inertia forces. 121. In the theory of general relativity, the curvature of spacetime causes frames to be locally inertial, but globally non-inertial. Due to the non-Euclidean geometry of curved spacetime, there are no global inertial reference frames in general relativity. More specifically, the fictitious force which appears in general relativity is the force of gravity. 122. It is said that a given frame which is non-inertial can be detected by its need for fictitious forces to explain observed motions. For example, the rotation of the Earth can be observed using a Foucault pendulum. The rotation of the Earth seemingly causes the pendulum to change its plane of oscillation because the surroundings of the pendulum move with the Earth. As seen from an earthbound, non-inertial, frame of reference, the explanation of this apparent change in orientation requires the introduction of the fictitious Coriolis force. 123. A simple way of dealing with this problem is, of course, to transform all coordinates to an inertial system. This is, however, sometimes inconvenient. Suppose, for example, we wish to calculate the movement of air masses in the Earth's atmosphere due to pressure gradients. We need the results relative to the rotating frame, the Earth, so it is better to stay within this coordinate system if possible. This can be achieved by introducing fictitious, or non-existent, forces which enable us to apply Newton's laws of motion in the same way as in an inertial frame. 124. NASA, for example, has done just that. According to a PDF online document entitled Algorithm Theoretical Basis Document for Aster Level 1 Data Processing, Ver 3.0, the following is cited: orbital reference frame to Earth inertial frame. The line-of-sight vectors in the orbital reference coordinate frame can be converted to the expression in the Earth inertial coordinate frame. Earth inertial frame to Earth fixed frame. The line-of-sight vectors in the Earth inertial coordinate frame can be converted to a mathematically expression in the Earth fixed coordinate frame. For math details, see Chapter 7 on my website. 125. NASA uses a theoretical system of coordination. 126. Theoretical basis of geometric system correction. The geometric system correction is divided into several parts as follows. 1. The pointing correction. 2. The coordinates transformation from navigation base reference of the spacecraft to the orbital reference frame. 3. The coordinates transformation from the orbital reference coordinate frame to the Earth inertial coordinate frame. 4. The coordinates transformation from the Earth inertial coordinate frame to the Earth Greenwich coordinate frame. 5. Identification of a crosspoint between the Earth's surface and an extended line of the vector. Notation: the GIF on the right demonstrates said conversion and placements of alleged satellites. 127. In another PDF document found online, we learn that the only system used to designate one's position on Earth is the Earth-centered, Earth-fixed coordinates. 128. The intersection of a plane and a sphere is a circle, or is reduced to a single point or is empty. Any ellipsoid is the image of the unit sphere under some affine transformation, and any plane is the image of some other plane under the same transformation. So, because affine transformations map circles to ellipses, the intersection of a plane with an ellipsoid is an ellipse or a single point or is empty. Obviously, spheroids contain circles. This is also true, but less obvious, for triaxial ellipsoids. 129. There are two generic types of coordinates, Cartesian and curvilinear of angular. Those that provide XYZ type values in meters, kilometers or other distance units are called Cartesian. Those that provide latitude, longitude, and height are called curvilinear or angular. The Cartesian and angular coordinates are equivalent, but only after supplying some extra information. For the spherical Earth model only the Earth radius is needed. For the ellipsoidal Earth, two parameters of the ellipsoid are needed. These can be any of several sets. The most common is the semi-major axis, called A, and the flattening, called F. 130. Mathematical formulas and equations are used interchangeably at will according to the need at hand. Formulas and equations are based upon fictitious forces due to no global inertial reference frames in general relativity. Hence transforming all coordinate systems into inertial frames of reference. This juxtaposition of elaborate mathematical expressions is nothing new. We have read an example of this type of inversion, if you will, before in Chapter 1, when the ancient Chinese astronomer's book, Huainanzi, inverted Eratosthenes' calculation pertaining to the curvature of the Earth, while another text, Zhoubi Suanjing, revealed a method of determining distances, like the Sun, by measuring noontime shadows from various latitudes, similar to Eratosthenes. 131. They have to perform transformations. These transformations are done through what they call the flattening factor. The need to change from a spherical Earth to an lentil, flat, Earth is absolutely necessary when performing Euclidean geometry. In Euclidean geometry, given a point and a line, there is exactly one line through the point that is in the same plane as the given line and never intersects it. Upon the concept of Euclidean geometry, precision datums can be performed, starting above the Kármán line, 62 miles high, which is the border between Earth's atmosphere and space. 132. Hence a flat Earth provides a linear transformation that increases or shrinks the size within a scale factor in all directions. This is done through directional scaling. Once the geodesy circles within a flat circle, as shown above, and transformation is worked out mathematically, the GPS, or in this case as I prefer to call it, the FPS, the flat positioning system, is achieved flawlessly. Hence all transformations are done systematically through linear, horizontal, up, down, vertical, trilateral directional datums, from point A to B, from satellite to tower, within a scale upon a flat Euclidean non-inertial geometrical Earth plane, surface. When you think of it, the GPS simply does not work on a ball Earth model because signals will always get obstructed due to a receiver, or tower, being on the other side of the Earth. However, signal obstructions are simply not the case, given the fact that many people can text and even video chat from Germany, Egypt, Russia and even Asia, to folks located in the United States. A feat impossible upon a ball Earth, given the fact that towers are placed upon a surface that is allegedly curving every 8 inches per mile upon a fictitious globe ball Earth. From Chapter 8, NASA's cameras, lenses and video equipment, an examination. 133. The ISS employs 11 cameras, 3 multifunctional devices with cameras, 1 HD viewing system, 1 standard viewing CCTV and 1 EHDCA. The last 3 are installed hardware and experiments. A total of 17 altogether. All cameras aboard the ISS are DSLRs, digital single-lens reflex. To understand the basics of a camera, I have decided to give a small basic tutorial of how cameras work for those who may be rusty, or for those who may not understand the workings of a camera. 134. If you pick any cloud in the sky and watch it for several minutes, 2 things will happen: the clouds will move and they will morph, gradually changing shape. In official NASA footage of the spinning ball Earth, such as the Galileo time-lapse video, however, clouds are constantly shown for 24+ hours at a time and not moving or morphing whatsoever. This is completely impossible, further proof that NASA produces fake CGI videos, and further evidence that Earth is not a spinning ball. 135. There are 2 types of cameras. Compact cameras are cameras that are small, you cannot change the lens, they are built in. And there are DSLRs. DSLRs are larger cameras. They come with an inexpensive lens called a kit. You can buy different lenses for them separately. 136. So if you have a DSLR, you can actually change lenses to get wide-angle, telephoto, macro, and fisheye lens capabilities. These lenses are sometimes called converter lenses. 137. As stated earlier, there are 17 instruments of recordable mechanisms aboard the ISS. They are as follows: the Kodak 760C, the Nikon D1, D2XS, D200, D3, D3X, D3S, D4, D800E, the iPhone 4, the HTC Nexus 1, iPad 2, HDV, high-definition Earth viewing camera, CCTV, a 4:3 standard definition camera, and a EHDCA, a Nikon D4 in special housing with motor-controlled zoom from 28 to 300. 138. Upon researching all of the cameras and video recording devices aboard the ISS, I found them all to be DSLR compatible. Even the Kodak 760C is DSLR compatible. 139. DSLR are fisheye compatible. 140. Video feed, embedded below, comes from 4 high-definition cameras, supposedly delivered by the SpaceX CRS-3 resupply mission. They are attached to the outside of the International Space Station. Notation: see various distortion examples from fisheye lenses on the right. 141. The High-Definition Earth Viewing Experiment, HDV, consists of 4 commercial off-the-shelf, COTS, high-definition video cameras that utilize fisheye lenses. 142. According to the citation, each video camera consists of 4 separate COTS technologies. Besides the acronym of the initials COTS, the term is also in reference to the type of lenses used during the live video feed. COTS are security-based cameras and recording devices, utilizing the fisheye format. 143. The HDV visible HD video cameras are a fixed payload camera system that requires no zoom, no pan or tilt mechanisms. The 4 fixed cameras are positioned to capture imagery of the Earth's surface and its limb as seen from the ISS. For example, one camera forward pointed into the station's velocity vector, the stern, 2 cameras aft, wake, toward the stern, and the other one camera pointing nadir. Under the stern perhaps. 144. Using a quarter, I turned a flat circular quarter into a globe using my Android phone, utilizing the fisheye lens format in the phone. To see the actual pictures and transformation of such, see Chapter 8. 145. My visual object lesson: the quarter, though flat, but circular, did appear curved, because it is. But only at its edges. And as I fish-eyed it, it curved from underneath. It is as if I had a camera at the nadir position. In actuality, my Android camera was the stern because it is located in the back of my phone. But we all know quarters are not globes. And they are certainly not spherical-shaped objects. Note: see my quarter example on the right. From Chapter 9, the curvature of rockets on a flat Earth. 146. According to mainstream science, rockets curve because, if a rocket just flew straight up, then it would fall right back down to Earth when it ran out of fuel. Rockets have to tilt to the side as they travel into the sky in order to reach orbit, or a circular path of motion around the Earth. This steering technique is known as a gravity turn, which uses Earth's gravity to help conserve rocket fuel and minimize stress and strain on the spacecraft. This works by rotating the spacecraft until its heavier side is facing down to help curve its flight into orbit. 147. Airplanes aren't launched vertically because their goal isn't really to efficiently escape from the Earth's gravitational field, or at least from Earth's atmosphere, but to move at a different location in the horizontal direction, to a different place on the Earth's surface. An approximately horizontal takeoff, with some tilt, to achieve the height where the atmosphere is less dense and the air resistance is lower, is better for that purpose. 148. The reason why rock is launched vertically instead of simply launching sideways is that by starting out going straight up they get past the majority of the atmosphere quickly. So on most launches, the spacecraft gets just high enough to get above what is called max Q, which is rocket scientist talk for the point of maximum aerodynamic resistance on the rocket. 149. However, a plane can travel at altitudes of 35,000 feet. The highest commercial airliner altitude was 60,000 feet by Concorde. The highest military air-breathing engine airplane was the State Route 71, about 90,000 feet. The highest airliner flying today reaches 45,000 feet. The highest business jet flying today reaches 51,000 feet. 150. If you fly above an altitude of 100 kilometers, 62 miles, above Earth, you are officially considered in space. The U.S. Air Force would call you an astronaut if you flew above 80 kilometers, almost 50 miles. That is 264,000 feet. Worldview Experience and 0 to Infinity are working to show you the world in space at 100,000 feet. Neither company can offer a trip to space. In the United States you're not considered an astronaut until you've cleared an altitude of 50 miles, 264,000 feet, well above a balloon trip's ceiling. Balloon flights they are proposing through eventual boost-offs. They're betting that balloon flights can offer a near-space similar experience. 151. The first picture came from a captured Nazi V-2 rocket in 1946. On October 24, 1946, researchers at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico strapped a DeVry 35mm movie camera into the nose of a V-2 rocket captured from the Nazis and blasted it toward space. The rocket shot straight up, 65 miles into the atmosphere before sputtering to a stop and descending back to Earth. Many claim that we were able to see the Earth's curvature from the V2 rocket, but this is simply not the case. See top picture on the right. 152.65 miles is 343,200 feet. That is even higher than our 35,000 and 90,000 feet accomplishments in typical aviation. They say, you should be able to detect it, curvature, from an airplane at a cruising height of around 10,600 meters, 35,000 feet, but you need a fairly wide field of view, for example, 60 degrees, and a virtually cloud-free horizon. 153, moreover, according to various pilots who have flown over 35,000 feet, they say they see no curvature. From a friend who was a military pilot, and from sources such as the many books I have read on the State Route 71 and U-2, it can be said that this doesn't appear until you get up to 55k to 60k feet. The highest I have been is 41k on a 777 and I couldn't see anything but a flat horizon. I am an airline pilot, and the highest I have been is 41,000 feet. Can't say that I have noticed any curvature. Not that I have been specifically looking for it either though. I would also guess that one would have to be at least 20 miles up to notice a curve without any instruments. 154, there is a paper published by NASA concerning linear aircraft. It is said there that NASA uses the non-rotating flat stationary Earth with reference to their calculations. On more than a few occasions the paper specifically uses the term, a stationary atmosphere on a non-rotating Earth. The paper is concerned about the spin of the atmosphere. The spin of the atmosphere is true. The velocity upon which it spins differs greatly according to height and location. For example, the atmosphere at heights of 200 to 300 kilometers differ from the atmosphere that is closer to the Earth. Hence, the need for the Earth Fixed Reference Frame, Etkin, 1972, the Earth Axis, Thelander, 1965, and the Eulerian Axis, Northrop Aircraft, 1952. The axis is an imaginary line between the two poles. This imaginary line must utilize Eulerian axis points as seen we will see in Chapter 18. The topodetic reference frame is considered fixed in space, and hence, inertial, with the orientation of the axis. The x-axis is directed north, the y-axis cast, and the z-axis down. The vehicle position, x and y, and altitude, h, are measured from the origin of this reference system. See Chapter 9 located on my website. You can find the paper document here. NASA.gov, Dryden PDF. 155. Many would counter and claim, to linearize a nonlinear flight model for the purpose of simplification, you have to assume those criteria, otherwise it would no longer be linear. Linear algebra is used to make approximations of nonlinear models. If the mass changes, the calculations are no longer linear. If the vector of gravity changes via a spherical Earth, it wouldn't be linear. A flat plane and constant mass are demands to linearize the math. This paper is articulating the process used to linearize the model for quicker approximations. Those that are using this paper as a justification for a flat Earth have no flipping idea what they are reading or understand linear algebra. If flight happened with things of constant mass on a flat plane, then the linear model would be the only one that existed. There wouldn't be papers about the process of linearization. 156. The objection is correct. But the blogger did not account for linear independence or two vectors having two different dimensions. If two vectors point in different directions, even if they are not very different in direction, then the two vectors are said to be linearly independent. If vectors point in the same direction, then you can multiply vector by a constant, scalar value and get vector, and vice versa to get from the two. If the two vectors point in different directions, then this is not possible to make one out of the other, because multiplying a vector by a scalar will never change the direction of the vector, it will only change the magnitude. This concept generalizes to families of more than two vectors. Three vectors are said to be linearly independent if there is no way to construct one vector by combining scaled versions of the other two. The same definition applies to families of four or more vectors by applying the same rules. 157. We all know that LSM is supposed to supposedly work with the theory of general relativity, while linearized gravity is the application of perturbation theory to the metric tensor that describes the geometry of spacetime. As a consequence, linearized gravity is an effective method for modeling the effects of gravity when the gravitational field is weak. The usage of linearized gravity is integral to the study of gravitational waves and weak field gravitational lensing. Notice where it says the gravitational field is weak. This means that the paper done in 1988 was conducted at an assumed altitude where the force of gravity is weak. Question: can you add two vectors representing physical quantities having different dimensions? Solution: two quantities cannot be added or subtracted if they have different dimensions, be it a vector or a scalar quantity. But they can be multiplied or divided, or only multiplied in the case of vectors. Now if the magnitude be changed, then consider the vector space. 158, at 65 miles high, the V-2 rocket entered space and lost its aerodynamics once it reached the gravitational weak point because it did not have the fuel to keep it in orbit above that height. The test was designed mainly to see the Earth, not to orbit it, hence it came down and crashed. The point I am making is that even at the point of the Earth's weak gravitational field at 65 miles above, the Earth appeared flat and endless against the expanse of its own space. This is also apparently true concerning NASA's linear aircraft paper written in 1988. 159, even the universe, according to NASA, is flat. Recent measurements, circa 2001, by a number of ground-based and balloon-based experiments, including MAT/TOCO, Boomerang, Maxima, and DESI, have shown that the brightest spots are about 1 degree across. Thus, the universe was known to be flat to within about 15% accuracy prior to the WMAP results. WMAP has confirmed this result with very high accuracy and precision. We now know, as of 2013, that the universe is flat with only a 0.4% margin of error. This suggests that the universe is infinite in extent. However, since the universe has a finite age, we can only observe a finite volume of the universe. All we can truly conclude is that the universe is much larger than the volume we can directly observe. From Chapter 10, The Flat Circular Earth and the Theory of Gravity. 160, mainstream stance is based upon Newton's gravitational acceleration law of gravitation, which is G equals 9.806 meters per square second, and hence applying that law unto a flat Earth hypothesis that has no center of gravity, but is the same magnitude everywhere, is preposterous. 161, mainstream states that 9.8 m/s/2 is the acceleration of an object due to gravity at sea level on Earth. You get this value from the law of universal gravitation. 162, however, this acceleration is based upon an assumption based upon a theoretical constant. Further confirmation of this is cited in Socratic.org, since g is calculated using only constants, g is a constant. Where r is radius of the Earth. As Earth is not a perfect sphere, value of gravity g is not a constant at all the locations on the surface of the Earth. Therefore, for practical purposes we take acceleration due to gravity as a constant. 163, most people believe gravity is the same everywhere on Earth, but this is not the case. Since mainstream science maintains that the Earth is not perfectly spherical or uniformly dense, gravity is weaker and varies at different locations, especially at the equator due to centrifugal forces produced by Earth's alleged rotation. This quantity is sometimes referred to informally as little g. In contrast, the gravitational constant g is referred to as big G. The precise strength of Earth's gravity varies depending on location. The nominal average value at Earth's surface, known as standard gravity, is, by definition, 9.80665 meters per square second. 164, many would be quick to cite, no matter the density of Earth it will have infinite mass. Therefore, it will have infinite gravity, which is absolutely impossible. This line of reasoning is a misunderstanding of a non-Euclidean approach to a flat Earth in reference to gravity. 165, Gauss's law shows that an infinite plane would have a finite gravitational pull. 166, we can apply Gauss's law in a gravitational field, as in Booger gravity, gravity anomalies. These anomalies are referred to as Booger's gravity, named after Pierre Booger, mathematician, physicist and astronomer, 1698 to 1758. See next slide. 167, from this all others follow suite, Coulomb force, Coulomb potential, electric field, Heaviside-Lorentz system and inverse square law. Important notation, the physics shown on the right is continued in the next slide. 168, this is called the Gaussian pillbox. The Gaussian pillbox is the surface with an infinite charge of uniform charge density used to determine the electric field. Similarly, this surface is most often used to determine the electric field due to an infinite sheet of charge with uniform charge density, or a slab of charge with some finite thickness. The pillbox has a cylindrical shape and can be thought of as consisting of three components: the disk at one end of the cylinder with area pi r superscript 2, the disk at the other end with equal area, and the side of the cylinder. The sum of the electric flux through each component of the surface is proportional to the enclosed charge of the pillbox, as dictated by Gauss's law. Because the field close to the sheet can be approximated as constant, the pillbox is oriented in a way so that the field lines penetrate the disks at the ends of the field at a perpendicular angle and the side of the cylinder are parallel to the field lines. 169. The shortened version of this non-Euclidean approach was conducted by Eric Weinstein's World of Physics with reference to infinite parallel planes, and sphere electric fields. 170. Mainstream would counter by citing that Gauss's law cannot be used on non-Gaussian surfaces, like those seen in the following slide, such as a disk surface, a square surface, or a hemispheric surface. They would have boundaries as the following slide under important notation illustrates, red being its boundaries on the right. They do not fully enclose a 3D volume. Moreover, infinite planes require infinite energy, which is said not to exist. 171. However, infinite planes can approximate Gaussian surfaces as demonstrated in the Weinstein approach. That being the case, would not an infinite plane require infinite energy? The answer to that question is, yes. It is said that energy goes on forever, infinite, but the total energy it imparts is finite. However, a constantly expanding and accelerating universe, or plane for that matter, always requires infinite energy. 172. Now, if you were to ask somebody how much gravitational pull an infinite amount of mass would exert, the common sense answer would be infinite. However, upon inspection we can see that certain configurations of mass would actually yield finite gravitational pulls. 173. When comparing the difference between the two, mainstream and flat earthers are the same, except for their conclusions in reference to the thickness of a flat earth plane. Both use different gravitational pull speeds. Mainstream chose UA as a constant, utilizing a sphere in the long run. Flat earthers, on the other hand, utilized Booger's gravity, non-UA, Gauss's law, infinite planes and spherical electric fields, which in turn provided no contradiction to the given physics at hand. Notation. The comparisons between the two mathematical and physics equations of Bislin and Davis and Weinstein are the same, except for their conclusions in reference to the thickness of a flat earth plane. Both use different gravitational pull speeds. Bislin chose UA as a constant, utilizing a sphere in the long run. Davis and Weinstein, on the other hand, utilized Booger's gravity, a non-UA, Gauss's law, infinite planes and spherical electric fields which in turn provided no contradiction to the given physics at hand. According to Davis, counter-integral g n de equals -4 pi gm. G equals 9.81 meters per second. G equals 6.754 times 10 to 11 cubic meters kg minus 1s minus 2. P equals 5.51 g/cm superscript 3, the average density of Earth, giving us d equals g/2 pi gp. This evaluates to around 4,195.43 kilometers deep. The following is proof of a flat Earth mathematically. Bislin, 9.806 meters per square second, UA. Weinstein, 9.81 meters per second Booger gravity. Bislin, G equals 2 pi gpb, flat Earth at 4,241 kilometers deep. Weinstein, D equals G/2 pi gp, flat Earth at 4,195.43 kilometers deep. The calculations by Bislin, with comparative conjunction to my own findings, simply does not hold water. The equation of a ball Earth, and therefore a limited sphere hanging in space, with its curvature at m superscript 2 times 0.7993624 equals d, or as commonly written by globalists m superscript 2 times 8 equals d, fails all observational empirical evidence by spherical globe standards, as demonstrated in Chapter 1, hence proving a flat Earth. However, as synchronized and forth-telling these equations and formulas are, it should be remembered that math can virtually be used to validate or tear down any theory, depending on the spin it is given from its physicist. Math has no tie to reality, but it is a useful tool to inspect reality, if reality acts causally. From Chapter 11, Green Screens, Blue Screens, Astronauts on Wires and Stanley Kubrick. 174. NASA is using what is called green screen effects, blue screen effects and CGI imaging to make credible the claim of landing men on the moon in the late 1960s, early 70s and sending astronauts into space today to board the International Space Station. However, many today claim that this cannot be true. Things like blue and green screen effects, along with Photoshop, did not exist during the 1960s and 1970s. But this is far from the truth. They did exist. 175. In reference to Photoshop, the technology was created in 1987 and released to the public in 1990. But there were early forms of it before 1987, a picture-in-picture, so to speak. It was called superimposition, created in 1891. That is 168 years before the Apollo missions. 176. Optical illusions found its way into the green screen technique. Originally called chroma key composites or chroma keying, green screening was an established visual effect first rendered in 1898 by George Albert Smith. In 1903, green screen was utilized by Edwin S. Porter's The Great Train Robbery. The technique was used again with patented traveling mattis created by Frank Williams. This was used in many films such as The Invisible Man and Alice Comedies, a Walt Disney film using cartoon characters and backgrounds with live actors. 177. The blue screen method was developed in the 1930s at RKO Radio Pictures. At RKO, Linwood Dunn used an early version of the traveling mat to create wipes, where there were transitions like a windshield wiper in films. In 1950, Warner Brothers employee and ex-Kodak researcher Arthur Widmer began working on an ultraviolet traveling mat process. He also began developing blue screen techniques. 178. Blue screen advances are made by Ultimatte Corporation. 179. Blue and green screen compositing technology at Ultimatte Corporation are further advanced in 1949. 180. Ultimatte Corporation is an all-new Ultimatte 12. It is more than the world's best keyer, it's an advanced real-time compositing processor designed for the next generation of broadcast graphics. Ultimatte 12 features entirely new algorithms and color science that deliver true photorealistic composites. You get incredible edge handling, greater color separation, amazing color fidelity and better spill suppression than ever before, even in dark shadow areas or through transparent objects such as windows. The high-performance 12G SDI design gives you the power to work in Ultra HD and HD with sub-pixel processing for amazing image quality. Imagine presenting the weather, sports, news and entertainment in a cinematic quality environment, all composited in real time. 181. In March 2009 Rybczynski set up the Center for Audiovisual Technologies in Poland. The center, which officially opened in January 2013. 182. NASA started sending live real-time video streams from the ISS, International Space Station, on March 14, 2014 after the Center for Audiovisual Technologies opened in 2013 in Core, Central Operation of Resources for Educators, closed on June 30, 2013, which incidentally worked with one of NASA's many branches, STEM, science, technology, engineering and math. Naturally, STEM students and employees for NASA alike are receiving state-of-the-art technology from the Center for Audiovisual Technologies. 183. According to NASA Educator Resource Center Network and Core directly supports, that is until its closure in 2013, the NASA Education Strategic Coordination Framework, specifically NASA Education. They were to attract and retain students in STEM disciplines through a progression of educational opportunities for students, teachers and faculty. 184. Core is operated through a cooperative agreement with Lorain County Joint Vocational School. Core serves as the worldwide distribution center for NASA-produced multimedia educational materials. Core also supports the state-based NASA ERCNs with materials and training to assist the Educator Resource Center staff in better serving educators within their region. Moreover, Core supports specific goals. One of their goals is to reproduce and distribute NASA's aerospace audiovisual and multimedia educational materials. 185, NASA, the Center for Audiovisual Technologies and Core all have one thing in common, STEM. 186, NASA actually admits to using green screen effects. 187, NASA admits to using STEM careers at one time in conjunction with core productions as mentioned. 188, however, NASA today operates independently with reference to its distribution of video productions, apparent real-time video streaming and articles. Hence its STEM innovations and careers of today. 189, what you see are enhanced CGI, computer-generated imagery, effects from modern-day technologies as mentioned in Chapter 8 and 11. For example, some films make heavy use of chroma key to add backgrounds that are constructed entirely using CGI. Keying is an important component to visual effects. Put the wrong screen behind an actor or object, for example, a spaceship, then parts of the actor's clothing or ship model vanishes into thin air. You will be able to see right through certain parts of the actor's body or spaceship, as if they were invisible. 190. There are many NASA video fails because of this, and this is due to the fact that they must use real-time video broadcasts to convince the masses. 191. I posted 6 NASA video fails in Chapter 11. In addition to that, I have decided to also post 3 educational videos, 2 on green and blue screen effects, and the other on matte techniques. And 1 informative video on TV signal technologies as it was capable of doing back in the 1960s. See Chapter 11 of my The Pale Blue study series on my website. 192. Matting and wipes can clearly be seen in official, real-time NASA live streams. 193. On another note, the movie, Capricorn 1, 1976, is brilliant at the telling of this. 194. Location is key. Again, read Chapter 11 of my Pale Blue series. 195. Video codec is key. Again, read Chapter 8 of my Pale Blue series. 196. Circles, or illuminated circled lights, are used for tracking purposes. The grid version provides an even greater tracking image for CGI composites, down to the smallest CGI detail when actors or astronauts are overlaid in the scene. See the following picture in the next slide. 197. NASA is nominated for a category called A Night in the Woods. The runner-up was Mission ISS by Magnipus. The awards that NASA did win is called On-Site JPLW/Microsoft and Protospace. 198. Magnipus is a visual development and experience company founded by Academy Award winners to tell stories without borders. 199. NASA has admitted to having never left Earth's lower orbit due to the Van Allen radiation belts, or as some flat earthers would call it, the firmament dome. 200. There were many authorities who denied the Apollo landings. There are videos pertaining to this. There is also a mockumentary called The Dark Side of the Moon directed by William Carell. 201. In December 2015, a video surfaced which allegedly shows Stanley Kubrick being interviewed shortly before his 1999 death. The video purportedly shows the director confessing to T. Patrick Murray that the Apollo moon landings had been faked. Research quickly found, however, that the video was a hoax. 202. The hoaxer did not delete the obvious expose in his video. If I was perpetrating a hoax, would want to permanently remove and delete all evidence of an expose. Perhaps it was a PSYOP? 203. The purpose of various United States psychological operations is to induce or reinforce behavior favorable to U.S. objectives. 204. There are 3 main types: strategic, operational, and tactical. A strategic PSYOP includes informational activities conducted by U.S. government agencies outside of the military arena, though many utilize Department of Defense (DoD) assets. Operational PSYOPs are conducted across the range of military operations, even during peacetime, in a defined operational area to promote the effectiveness of the Joint Force Commanders (JFC) campaigns and strategies. Tactical PSYOPs are conducted in the area assigned to a tactical commander across the range of military operations to support the tactical mission against opposing forces. 205. If the moon landings, or the ISS for that matter, were and are part of a PSYOP, then it falls under the strategic exercise as performed by agencies outside of the military, in this case NASA. Although, like mentioned above, it may also utilize the DoD. From Chapter 12, Illusion, Realism, Philosophy of Perception of and Visual Space. 206, the concept of perception concerning visual space exists. 207, an illusion is a distortion of the senses, which can reveal how the human brain normally organizes and interprets sensory stimulation. Though illusions distort our perception of reality, they are generally shared by most people. 208, the philosophy of perception is concerned with the nature of perceptual experience and the status of perceptual data, in particular how they relate to beliefs about, or knowledge of, the world, or earth world, as seen from space. 209, visual space is the perceptual space housing the visual world being experienced by an aware observer. It is the subjective counterpart of the space of physical objects before an observer's eyes. 210, external and sensory perception falls under visual space. 211, stellar aberrations and parallaxes within their relationships regarding distant measurements fail. 212, Ernst Mach cited spaces are threefold manifolds, but they are neither constituted everywhere and, in all directions, alike, nor infinite in extent, nor unbounded. In other words, what Mach is saying is that 2- and 3-dimensional Euclidean space is not infinite or unbounded. And as such the former, 2-dimensional space, is not everywhere, but such spaces are all alike. They are not infinite, but yet they remain unbounded. 213, like I discussed in Chapter 3. 214, the expanding universe just may simply be the expanding firmament and Earth along with it. Stellar parallaxes, the flying away of objects in relation to parallax measurements, explains this as discussed in Chapters 2 and 3 of my Pale Blue series. 215, George Friedrich Bernhard Riemann, 1826–1866, was the first to recognize geometry on the surface of a sphere. Spherical geometry is a type of non-Euclidean geometry. This is the reason we named the spherical model for elliptic geometry after him, the Riemann sphere. 216, Euclidean geometry differs greatly from that of hyperbolic geometry. 217, Rudolf Lundberg writes a paper that visual space was hyperbolic with constant curvature, meaning that elements can be moved throughout the space without changing shape. One of Lundberg's major arguments is that, in accord with a common observation, the transformation involving hyperbolic space renders infinity into a dome, the sky. 218, Lundberg indicated that space itself is transformed into an infinite dome, the sky, with layers, as discussed in Chapter 6 with reference to the different layers of atmospheric expansions, hence, expanding infinitely. 219, hyperbolic space became a reality when the first published works expounding the existence of hyperbolic and other non-Euclidean geometries were confirmed by Russian mathematician Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, who wrote on the subject in 1829. Independently, Hungarian mathematicians Farkas and János Bolyai, father and son, also wrote on the topic in 1831. 220, in hyperbolic geometry, there are two kinds of parallel lines. If two lines do not intersect within a model of hyperbolic geometry, but they do intersect on its boundary, then the lines are called asymptotically parallel or hyperparallel. 221, Lundberg's discussions and corroborating experiments on the whole did not favor his conclusions. 222, Lundberg's non-favorable conclusions are based upon one concept, the concept of realism. 223, realism is questioned into doubt. This reasoning of thought is called the argument from illusion. 224, the philosophy of perception was a popular view held in the early 20th century by philosophers such as Bertrand Russell, C.D. Broad, H.H. Price, A.J. Ayer and G.E. Moore. 225, A.J. Ayer demonstrates a weakness in realism. A wonderful example of this is Ayer's stick demonstration in water, a second component. Hence, the stick bends under water. See Chapter 8 for stick demonstrations. 226, Austin, J. L., criticized the argument. 227, Ayer's and Austin's claims are both valid. 228, Austin's claims are lacking. 229, Austin's, logic concerning appearances are dependent upon experience, what we know. An experience of knowing things from first-hand experience because we are, or were, there to experience it first. 230, Austin's argument is based upon established experience. I would have ventured to ask him, was he there when, what he refers to as a second component, came into existence? 231, does water bend? Or is it straight? Is the stick bending or is it straight? 232, water changes its shape. 233, fish see the stick as a bending reality. 234, from our viewpoint, the earth seems to bend, curve. Is this due to a spherical, ball, shape, or a circular flat disk as discussed and demonstrated in earlier chapters? Hence, a hyperbolic two-dimensional space. 235, they say the earth curves. Is it a continuous curve, like Ernst Mach suggested? Would that prove a spherical ball earth? No, it would not. And why, you may ask? Because continuous curves, like Mach claimed, have no end, especially if the ball and/or firmament is expanding like I discussed in Chapter 3. See the picture on the right and the following GIF with reference to distortions and illusions. (236) Another reason it wouldn't prove a spherical ball Earth is because water alters the shape of sticks and land masses. If NASA is not putting the hoax on us, and things are as they seem to be regardless of any fisheye lens, then what we may be seeing is the bending of the firmament above as it expands on top and at the bottom, the waters beneath. This will account for the bending of the stick land masses. Let us remember, land masses are nothing but bodily formations of the earth sticking up out from under the first component, water. And as such, land masses, though flat, alters its shape in relation to the bending of the waters surrounding it, giving it a curved illusion. 237, waters came first. Sticks came second. 238, according to modern science, the water we swim in and drink here on earth is even older than the sun. 239, and the earth was without form, non-existent. Void and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, Genesis 1 verse 2. 240, the sun, moon and stars are therefore questionable with reference to stellar aberration, parallax and what we see, whether real or illusion from perception. The following table illustration demonstrates the reality that all isn't how we may think things are. From Chapter 13, the sun, moon, and eclipses. 241, science uses what is called the AU, the astronomical unit. 242, using the AU, science says the sun is 93 million miles away. 243, according to science, the AU is not used for any other purpose but to measure objects between the earth and the sun. 244, 6 pubic domains from the governments of the US and the former Soviet Union in the 1950s reveal experiments and physics math that can only be utilized on a flat Earth and a close local Sunday. The documents are released publicly in 2005. 245, science says, the temperature at the surface of the sun is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 5,600 Celsius. The temperature rises from the surface of the sun inward towards the very hot center of the sun where it reaches about 27 million degrees Fahrenheit, 15 million Celsius. It is therefore absurd to even think of a local sun when its diameter is 865,374 miles, accompanied with its enormous heat at 10,000 to 27,000 degrees Fahrenheit. 246, but what if we were to shrink the sun and claim it to be only a light source with limited heat as it shines, bringing daylight perpendicular to the regions where it rises, at a relatively close range of about 2,700 to 3,000 miles away. 247, most flat earthers claim the sun to be about 2,700 to 3,000 miles, which is 14,256,000 to 15,840,000 in feet. They, along with some physicists, claim the sun is traveling around the earth and not the other way around. 248, according to science and NASA, Earth is rotating at 1,000 miles per hour, 1,036 to 1,037 miles per hour, according to NASA, with our moon at 2,288 miles per hour, and not the sun. 249, a nautical mile is based on the circumference of the Earth and is equal to 1 minute of latitude. It is slightly more than a statute, land measured, mile, 1 nautical mile equals 1.1508 statute miles. Nautical miles are used for charting and navigating. 250, the distance between degrees of longitude is about 60 nautical miles at the equator. It is less far north or south as the longitude lines converge towards the poles. Degrees of latitude are always 60 nautical miles apart. 251. A circle is 360 degrees from start to finish, and a line drawn in the middle causes the half on the right and the half on left to become 180 degrees respectively. Now picture the sun circling clockwise as it rises and sets with 12-hour intervals. 12 times 2 equals a 24-hour period. That would make our 360-degree circle exactly 180 degrees, half a circle, based our sun rising in the east and setting in the west at the equinox. And knowing that 60 nautical miles equals 1 degree, for example, a 1 degree longitude equals 60 nautical miles, 2 degrees equals 120 nautical miles, and so forth. And also knowing that 1 nautical mile equals 1.150.78 English miles, the mathematics for a traveling rotating sun on a flat Earth is now possible as follows. 252, 60 nautical miles equals 1 degree. 253, 180 degrees times 60 nautical miles equals 10,800 nautical miles, that is from the moment the sun rose and to the moment it set, it traveled 10,800 nautical miles, and it took 12 hours to do it. 254, 10,800 nautical miles times 1.15078 is equal to 12,428.424 miles. 255, 12,428.424 miles divided by 12 hours equals 1,035.702 miles per hour, 1,036 rounded off. When we add its full encirclement 1,036 times 2, it comes out to 2,702, about the same as its distance, as we will find out below. 256. The Sun, on the model of a flat Earth, is the object that is traveling at the speed of 1,036 and not the Earth. It is the same number as the alleged traveling of the Earth at 1,036. Is this a coincidence? 257. There are several theories about the relative size and distance of the Sun and Moon, all with their points of evidence and points of contention. One can easily use sextants and plane trigonometry to calculate the distance of the Sun and Moon. When this method is used, the finding result is that the Sun and Moon are both only about 32 miles in diameter and less than a few thousand miles from the Earth, 2,700 to 3,000. 258. Sextants for astronomical observations are devices depicting a sixth of a circle, used primarily for measuring the positions of stars. See the following GIF with regard to sextants. (259) Sextants are replaced over time by transit telescopes and astrometry techniques. Astrometry is the branch of astronomy that involves precise measurements of the positions and movements of stars and other celestial bodies. 260. Information obtained by astrometric measurements provide information on the kinematics of celestial objects. Kinematics is the study of motion only, from point A to B and so forth. 261. Some would conclude that sextants only work but for so much. It fails to accurately measure long-distance celestial bodies, like stars and so forth. This thinking is faulty. As we have learned in Chapter 2, stellar parallaxes, when used with reference to celestial objects, which gave birth to stellar aberrations, the so-called final nail in the coffin for geocentrism, are not compatible with the theories of light. 262. Many cite that of the commercial and corporate airliners and jets, they fly well above 2,700 to 3,000 miles in altitude. Not so, they are confusing miles with feet. Remember, our 2,700 miles equals 14,256,000 in feet. While our 3,000 miles equals 15,840,000 in feet. 263. Large passenger planes can't fly much higher than about 12 kilometers, 7.5 miles, which is 39,600 feet. The air is too thin above that altitude to hold the plane up. 264. The highest certified altitude of an airliner was Concorde's 60,000 feet. Today some of the corporate jets can fly at 51,000 feet. Question: what is the highest cruising altitude allowed? Answer: most airliners are limited to 45,000 feet or less. 265. The Moon is about 2,700 to 3,000 miles away, and not roughly about 238,000 miles away. Its speed can be calculated as the Sun was. In reference to its size, you will recall that mainstream science claims that its radius is 1079, its diameter is 2159.2, and it has an equatorial circumstance of 6783.5 miles. This too, as in their proportional measurements, can also be measured by using the same techniques as we did in reference to the Sun. 266. According pseudoscience science, the Moon orbits the Earth once every 27.322 days. It also takes approximately 27 days for the Moon to rotate once on its axis. As a result, the Moon does not seem to be spinning but appears to observers from Earth to be keeping almost perfectly still. Scientists call this synchronous rotation. 267. Synchronous rotation is used to explain why the Moon appears upside down in the southern hemisphere and right side up in northern hemisphere, or vice versa according to your location, hence proving a spherical ball Earth. 268. However, the way we see the Moon is due to perspective, where we are on the Earth. For instance, put a sticker of the number 9 on your ceiling. From one perspective, it will show you that it is still the number 9. But if you were to walk to the opposite side of the room, the number 9 will flip over to reveal a 6, hence the term, upside-down moon, in the southern hemisphere. Or right side up, depending on positional perspective. If you were to walk in the middle, the equator, of the number, you will see it not as a number at all. You will be simply seeing it from a third perspective. 269. The Moon may be turning like a wheel. Not rotating but turning like a wheel. This, along with invisible heavenly bodies, will also account for its various phases. Moreover, this turning can easily work on both models, a ball, a transparent, or disc-shaped moon. This turning, for instance, starts as we see it rising in the north and then flips as it rises in the south and reflips back when entering the north again, and so on. That is the reason for our not seeing the back of the Moon on a flat Earth. It also may be blocked out by other celestial objects. 270. Moon phases are due to other heavenly bodies in the heavens, it is not restricted to the Earth. On many occasions we see a rounded, concave and even a flat half-moon shadow. 271. Many ancients of the past and professors of modern-day academia will also insist that not only does the Earth not cast a shadow upon the Moon, but that the phenomena is due to other heavenly bodies coming in between the Moon and the Earth which may be invisible. 272. Many authorities, past and present, are in consensus with the concept of heavenly invisible bodies casting shadows and eclipses. 273. Invisible structures lurk in the Milky Way. Essentially, the structures appear to be large clumps of some sort of material, possibly clouds of cool gas, in the existing thin gas that lies between the stars. They appear to be in odd shapes also. 274. The only explanation for this is that the Moon is either transparent or semi-transparent, and eclipses, full and partial, are due to unseen invisible objects coming across it, as we have learned above. This will also confirm its phases. The stars are either relatively close to it, even coming across it, in front of its face, as they orbit the firmament, and behind it as in the Moon's transparency. 275. Moreover, in order to see a full moon with 100% totality you would need to be looking at the Moon's daylight side face on. But according to the geometry of the globe Earth we would never see the daylight side face on, otherwise the Earth would get in the way of the sunlight. There should always be a portion of the Moon that is unlit. 100% totality should be impossible no matter how much mental gymnastics are done with the scale. If we are not looking at the daylight side face on, complete totality is impossible. 276. Knowing this, it therefore most likely that the term, dark side of the Moon, is either fictitious or an error based upon the globe Earth theory. However, on a possible transparent, or semi-transparent Moon, the unseen dark side does not exist. But some would argue that the images taken from the Deep Space Climate Observatory, DSCO, satellite confirms not only a globular Earth, but also the Moon's dark side, the other side we do not see. 277. The observatory orbits the Earth at about 1.6 million kilometers, 1 million miles. It contains a 4-megapixel CCD camera and telescope. The camera is called the EPIC, Earth Polychromatic Imaging Camera. The EPIC has an aperture diameter of 30.5 centimeters, 12 inches, a focal ratio of 9.38, a field of view of 0.61 degrees and an angular sampling resolution of 1.07 arcseconds. 278. a further look into the type of lens used on the observatory would reveal another fisheye lens. 279. There are all sorts of fisheye lenses. For instance, there are fisheye lenses for APS-C cameras. Some common APS-C sensors range from 23.6 to 23.7 mm, 0.93 to 0.93 inches, on the long dimension 15.6 mm, 0.61 inches on the shorter side, for a diagonal measurement between 28.2 to 28.4 mm, 1.11 to 1.12 inches. But in the case of the DSCO, in short, they are using circular stereographic inverse mapping fisheye techniques. 280. NASA claims, via the DSCO, that it showed us the dark side of the moon during the solar eclipse of 2017 as it was orbiting the Earth. 281. The so-called dark side is, well, dark. How can that be when the Earth is lit? Since the Earth is lit from the sun in this instance should be directly in front of the Earth, and therefore the dark side of the moon should not be dark at all. It should be illuminating, since mainstream pseudoscience science claims that the moon gets its light from the sun. 282. As you can see from the GIF on the right side, there is a black circular mat surrounding the NASA solar eclipse video, similar to what we will learn about in Chapter 19. From Chapter 14, the planets and the stars. 283. Planets were seen as wandering stars as opposed to its other celestial companions, which are considered fixed. 284. What constitutes a planet, as a non-gaseous body within a substance, along with its alleged gravitational influence, was decided upon in 2006. 285. Prior to 2006, the term planet was completely arbitrary. But yet mainstream science maintained it as fact based upon an axiom. 286. A Mars-sized or larger object beyond the orbit of Pluto would not be considered a planet, because some believe that it would not have time to clear its orbit. 287. A flat-shaped planet will override what constitutes a planet by classification of what actually makes a planet. But it certainly does not mean that they cannot exist. According to an article in Forbes, you could make a flat world that was larger than any object in our asteroid belt, and possibly even nearly the size of our moon. 288. Neil deGrasse Tyson cites Earth is still round. But yet, he still cannot disprove the flat Earth model, as we discussed in Chapter 13 in reference to an article that revealed such by the Washington Post. 289. A planet is a celestial body that, A, is in orbit around the Sun, B, has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium, nearly round, shape, and C, it has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. 290. Classification of what constitutes a planet was not harmoniously agreed upon. 291. If the clearing the neighborhood criterion was to be abandoned, the number of planets in the solar system could rise from 8 to more than 50, with hundreds potentially to be discovered. 292. If the criterion of clearing the neighborhood is abandoned, the Earth, whether a spherically oblate object or a flat circular non-rotating disc-shaped body, wouldn't matter, since it will be non-conforming to IAU classifications for what constitutes a planet. 293. Clearing the neighborhood actually means that a body of mass is independent of other, what they call, gravitational influences. 294. When asked the question, what is the definitive proof for gravity, Simon Bridge, scientist, revealed originally on Quora, and then published in Forbes, said, there isn't one. That is not how science works. Moreover, Bridge continues, for Einstein, gravity is the experiment of bending starlight. This is a key distinction between Einstein and Newtonian gravity, which both predict the bending of starlight but to different amounts. 295. Furthermore, there are several different theories concerning, for lack of a better word, this anomaly. 296. There are 21 theories concerning this anomaly, force. 297. 10 are in harmony with water as being the first, or at least the primary component of force in movement of shape, mass and perception, as briefly discussed in Chapter 12. 298. The astronomical unit, aka, the AU as defined, comes from measurements pertaining to ancient Greek stadiums. It is literally of stadia myriads between 480,000 stadia. 299. On a side note, the Book of Enoch reveals that man would alter creation, asserting onto celestial bodies that wander pagan names. The naming of celestial objects after Roman gods is still practiced today. When no name is given, an object simply remains unnamed. It remains as a number until a pagan Roman name, or its equivalent in other languages, is given onto it when astronomers see fit. 300. Planets are said to be rocky or gaseous. 301. It is said that spectrometers help us determine the properties of a planet. This is done by using color from the periodic table. 302. However, one can choose any color for any element. There is no standard set of colors used to identify element groups or other properties. Colors are selected based on how well the text shows up against them, but mostly it's just a matter of personal preference. You can find periodic tables in a variety of color schemes. 303. Astronomers use the instrument called the optical spectrometer, which utilizes the electromagnetic spectrum, measures light intensity in wavelengths. All of this is matched and compared to chosen colors inserted in the spectrometer itself, that is the colors of the periodic table. But what are their colors? Answer: there are none. 304. Elements are given colors by individuals, your scientists, chemists and astronomers. In actuality, and therefore if, objects give off certain conformational characteristics, are not those conformations based upon any given chosen color? Yes, they are. 305. Therefore, the information that we receive concerning our wandering stars are invalid and are hence circumstantially influenced by exterior means outside of the spectrometer itself. And as such, we cannot ascertain for a certainty what our wandering stars are made up of. Rocky surfaces and various gaseous elements are merely poor hypothetical conclusions that have no basis in fact, since spectrums of light are just randomly chosen. CGI images are used with reference to, aka, planets. Without said CGI effects, they appear to only be wandering gaseous elements, lights of different colors and stars. 306. Robotic landings have been seen to be outright forgeries. Many of them are simply recorded on deserts or rocky surfaces here on Earth. 307. The mechanics, measurements, the use, and the definitions involved in finding out more about wandering stars are the same methods used to measure distant fixed non-wandering stars. Except in this case, the measurement is allegedly too large of a number to write down when finding the distance between anything beyond the Sun or outer solar system. In other words, the AU is no longer a practical means of measurement. They need a larger unit, the light year. 308. When was the term light year first coined? The term light year was published in 1838. 309. The light year is most often used when expressing distances to stars and other distances on a galactic scale, especially in non-specialist and popular science publications. The unit most commonly used in professional astrometry is the parsec. As opposed to the confusion that the phrase year in light year can entail. 310. This new type of unit was applied to the star 61 Cygni. Bessel used a 6.2-inch, 160 mm, heliometer designed by Joseph von Fraunhofer. The heliometer was the first so-called successful tool of measurement for stellar parallaxes in relation to a star's distance. The topic of parallax and its faulty conclusions was discussed in Chapter 2. 311. Nevertheless, the light year unit appeared in a 1851 German popular astronomical article by Otto Uhl. The ether was voted against. Though many disagreed with the consensus of voting against the ether, as we have learned in Chapter 2, parallax became the accepted standard form of calculation. Later the speed of light became, according to mainstream pseudoscience, a constant. 312. However, the speed of light is not constant. From Chapter 15 and Chapter 16, the Antarctica, Flight Paths and Circumnavigation / the Antarctic Treaty. Notation: I have placed Chapters 15 and 16 together in this outline due to their detailed amounts of information, too much to be included here. 313. Flat earthers, like globe earthers, do not deny the existence of the North Pole, the Arctica. The Arctica is the area where the North Star Polaris is fixed. But when it comes to the South Pole, the Antarctica, flat earthers deny its existence, claiming that the Antarctica is a wall of ice surrounding the enclosed domed Earth. According to flat earthers, the Antarctica is not a continent. 314. Flat earthers maintain that passenger flights deep into the Antarctica is impossible since it stretches for miles on end. Maintaining fuel for a trip to and from the entire Antarctica would be impossible, considering what the average, and even the well above average, passenger airliner tank can hold. Furthermore, flat earthers also believe that most of the Antarctica is off-limits to the rest of the civilian population from exploring it due to the Antarctic Treaty, whether by Twin Otters and/or personal planes. Crossing over the Antarctica is a feat that has never truly been accomplished, despite what you may have learned, heard or read. 315. Places like Antarctica 21 are in the business of allegedly flying over Cape Horn and the mythical waters of the Drake Passage. The 2019 to the present, classic Antarctica Air Cruises takes you to one of the most spectacular places on Earth, the coldest, highest, windiest, driest, and remotest continent, Antarctica. 30 departures were offered during the 2019-20 season, 12 aboard Ocean Nova, 4 aboard Hebridean Sky and 14 aboard Magellan Explorer. 316. Do planes really fly over the Antarctic? Has anyone flown over the Antarctic? The answer to both questions is, no. 317. Many bloggers and websites contradict each other with reference to flights over the Antarctic. 318. Ellsworth and Kenyon did not fly over the Antarctic, from Little America to Dundee Island, because the Antarctic as a continent does not exist at all. All they did was fly over a wall of ice, what is called its peninsula. 319. They got lost 3 times. 320. This inability to successfully find a destination the first time around is probably due to the anomalies found concerning the geomagnetic poles, specifically in this case, the southern geomagnetic pole. 321. There is really no such thing as a north or south pole. And while there are directional magnetic forces at work with regard to the north and south, the idea itself seems to cancel each other out, according to py6.org. 322. Furthermore, the north and south magnetic poles are wandering points on Earth's surface. They move, due to changes in Earth's magnetic field. The location of the south magnetic pole is currently off the coast of Antarctica and even outside the Antarctic Circle. All magnets have 2 poles, where the lines of magnetic flux enter and emerge. Because opposite poles attract, this definition means that the Earth's north magnetic pole is actually a magnetic south pole and the Earth's south magnetic pole is a magnetic north pole. 323. Science tells us the north will become the south, and south will become the north. However, the term flip is somewhat descriptive by those who uphold a spherical Earth model, wouldn't you say? But on the other hand, we can clearly see that the changes in magnetic directional influences are circular. And since they are circular, this directional path can also exist on a flat circular non-spherical Earth. See picture from physics in chapter 15. 324. The north geomagnetic pole is actually the south pole of the Earth's magnetic field, and the south geomagnetic pole is the north pole. The magnetic field is generated by electric currents due to the motion of convection currents of molten iron in the Earth's outer core driven by heat escaping from the core, a natural process called a geodynamo. 325. On a flat Earth it's true that unipolar magnets can't exist, but this is not a problem for the flat Earth model. This is because ring magnets, which are shaped like, you guessed it, a flat disk, are capable of having radial magnetization. In a radial magnet, one magnetic pole is at the center and the other is at all points on the edge of the magnet. But this explanation only speaks in reference to an ice wall surrounding the entire enclosed domed flat Earth. 326. The magnetic field from the iron in the base causes electricity to flow around through the ring. The electricity in the ring is called an eddy current. The eddy current causes the metal ring to become a magnet. The 2 electromagnets are arranged so that their north poles point at each other. Notation. The 2 pictures on the right demonstrates the iron core and its connection to its 37 results. Feel free to pause the video to take a screenshot picture or visit the actual chapters on my website located at theultimatereconciliationist.com. 327. Ring magnets neodymium. Most ring magnets and tube-shaped magnets are axially magnetized. North and south poles are located on flat circular surfaces, top and bottom. The few diametrically magnetized ring magnets with poles, left and right, are specifically marked. 328. Acknowledging an ice wall surrounding the Earth, the ring of currents and magnetic attractions itself are also caused from the bottom of the disk, like shown in Eddy's current. The wall of ice at the bottom of the Earth can converge to meet at a point. A pair of lines of longitude are parallel at the equator but converge toward the poles. 329. the United States National Centers for Environmental Information uses the Enhanced Magnetic Model, EMM. The EMM results in significantly improved pointing accuracy than the World Magnetic Model, WMM, which uses spherical harmonic representation to degree in order 12, resolving the magnetic field at 3,000 km wavelength. The EMM model provides the magnetic field vector at any desired location and altitude close to and above the Earth's surface. Why not simply use the WMM? Because they know it doesn't work. 330. Flight paths over the alleged continent of Antarctica have been debunked fully in chapters 15 and 16. Too much to cite in this outline. Please see chapters 15 and 16. 331. Circumnavigational paths taken by Magellan and Columbus over the alleged spherical Earth have also been debunked fully in chapters 15 and 16. Too much to cite in this video outline. Please see chapters 15 and 16. 332. Captain Cook discovers the ice wall. Cook said that he can find no south continent. 333. The first motive behind Cook's voyages was to find the transit of Venus, and the second was to find the elusive south continent. He found the transit of Venus but did not find a southern continent. So, he decided to set sail a second time to find it. And even though there was no evidence for it the first time, this continent was still rumored to exist. 334. The history of Antarctica emerges from early Western theories of a vast continent, known as Terra Australis, believed to exist in the far south of the globe. The term Antarctic, referring to the opposite of the Arctic Circle, was coined by Marinus of Tyre in the 2nd century AD. Terra Australis, Latin for South Land, was a hypothetical continent first posited in antiquity and which appeared on maps between the 15th and 18th centuries. The existence of Terra Australis was not based on any survey or direct observation, but rather on the idea that continental land in the northern hemisphere should be balanced by land in the south. This theory of balancing land has been documented as early as the 5th century on maps by Macrobius, who uses the term Australis on his maps. 335. So what we learn here is that map makers from the 15th and 18th centuries were influenced by Macrobius from the 5th century and actually made up a hypothetical land mass to match that found in the north. But what we learn from Cook, and his expertise in meticulously making maps as he saw things for himself, is that he concluded that no such southern continent existed. 336. Longitudes, latitudes and parallels are discussed, along with their degrees in chapters 15 and 16. 337. You are not allowed to sail or fly below the 60th south parallel. 338. Demanding a picture of the ends of the Earth, if any, requires one to not only travel below the 60th south parallel, but also to cross the entire breadth of Antarctica. And as stated before, the Antarctica is roughly 3,400 miles in diameter. So that would mean our trip would be a boat ride below the 60th south parallel, plus another 3,400-mile trip back, totaling 6,800 miles, that is assuming that the official model is correct. But again, we are not allowed to travel independently without alleged designated routes below the 60 parallel. 339. The Antarctic is nothing more than a very large sheet of ice, almost like a small island, but not a continent. 340. Anything beyond 60 degrees is forbidden to tourists. The only way one can go beyond the 60th south parallel is by designated routes. 341. Designated routes are due to the Antarctic Treaty established on December 1, 1959. 342. If we were to cut off 60 degrees in the north, the areas of land that will be cut off to the public would be all of northern Canada, Alaska, much of Russia, including St. Petersburg and other major cities, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland and Greenland. The cut-off is huge. Now why in the world is this much area blocked off in the south? Do you really think it's because of penguins, like the child propaganda movie, Happy Feet, so wonderfully illustrated for us? 343. Illuminating information into all this, including the Antarctic Treaty, can be found simply by reading Chapter 16. Too much to include here. From Chapter 17, the Northern/Southern Constellations and Space, the Final Frontier. 344. There are 21 companies and enterprises NASA has contracts with. You will notice that the DoD, Department of Defense, and the military are mentioned in conjunction with these contracted companies on several occasions. See Chapter 17 in full located on my website. 345. for all the names, details and citations pertaining to these companies, again, see Chapter 17. 346. Hilbert spaces. Hilbert space, named after David Hilbert, generalizes the notion of Euclidean space. It extends the methods of vector algebra and calculus from the two-dimensional Euclidean plane and three-dimensional space to spaces with any finite or infinite number of dimensions. It's essentially just an infinitely dimensional vector space. A Hilbert space is an abstract vector space possessing the structure of an inner product that allows length and angle to be measured. Furthermore, Hilbert spaces are complete. There are enough limits in the space to allow the techniques of calculus to be used. 347. In other words, a flat two-dimensional universe, Euclidean space, which contain finite dimensions of length and width, and three-dimensional spaces, which contain length, width and height, can be fixed and set at any infinite or finite distances to allow for measure and limits, but can also allow for limits that do not exist, hence the expansion. It allows curved space, which is often referred to as spatial geometry that is not flat, for flat space, described as Euclidean geometry, to exist. Hence, a flat universe with a flat expanding infinite Earth is not difficult to comprehend. If you are familiar with integrals and Gauss's law, then you should be able to understand the mathematics for an infinite Earth. 348. Gauss's law, with alleged gravitational forces, is confirmed when examined on an infinite flat Earth. See Physics Math in Chapter 10 in detail, located on my website. 349. We are told, space is the boundless three-dimensional extent in which objects and events have relative position and direction. Physical space is often conceived in three linear dimensions, although modern physicists usually consider it, with time, to be part of a boundless four-dimensional continuum known as spacetime. 350. Edwin Hubble, 1889–1953, discovered space. 351. However, a rival to Hubble, Harlow Shapley, thought that the universe was static. To Shapley, the universe was only the Milky Way, our galaxy, and that there was nothing else beyond it, despite an earlier declaration of such from William Herschel a century before. Like Hubble, Herschel believed that there was more to outer space than just our Milky Way galaxy. 352. Outer space does not begin at a definite altitude above the Earth's surface. However, the Kármán line, an altitude of 100 kilometers, 62 miles, above sea level, is conventionally used as the start of outer space in space treaties and for aerospace records keeping. 353. The term space was first used to mean the region beyond Earth's sky in John Milton's Paradise Lost in 1667. The term outward space was used in 1842 by the English poet Lady Emmeline Stuart Wortley in her poem, The Maiden of Moscow. The expression outer space was used as an astronomical term by Alexander von Humboldt in 1845. It was later popularized in the writings of H. G. Wells in 1901. 354. Space has three dimensions. It is called three-dimensional space. It is a geometric setting in which three values called parameters are required to determine the position of an element, for example, a point. This is the informal meaning of the term dimension. In physics and mathematics, a sequence of n numbers can be understood as a location in n-dimensional space. When n equals 3, the set of all such locations is called three-dimensional Euclidean space. 355. Later the concept of time was added to the space of three dimensions, called spacetime. Hence, the term, four-dimensional continuum. However, in 1905 Einstein postulated that the laws of physics are invariant, for example, identical, in all inertial systems, for example, non-accelerating frames of reference. The speed of light in a vacuum is the same for all observers, regardless of the motion of the light source. 356. We remember what was said in reference to light speed, light years, measurements, stellar parallax and aberrations. We remember the inconsistencies concerning them and how they were subject to error, miscalculations and downright personal preferences in a particular mathematical persuasion, all stemming from a minority vote and prestige, rather than the majority. Notation: the following picture on the right is the holometer. The purpose of it is to detect whether we live in a two-dimensional world or not. It will detect whether we live in a hologram or not. 357. Many physicists are beginning to once again question the validity of outer space itself. It would appear to me that many physicists are going back to the fundamentals, re-examining experiments, theories and mathematical equations in conjunction with those experiments and equations. 358. It is peculiar that some physicists are even questioning space, especially when they apparently have all the empirical evidence they will ever need, via photos and videos, courtesy of NASA and other space agencies. But nevertheless, question it they do. Flat earthers are not the only ones. 359. What is the shape of the universe? Answer: there are three possibilities. In general relativity, four-dimensional spacetime is curved. There are basically three possible shapes to the universe. 1. A flat universe, Euclidean or zero curvature, like a sheet. 2. A spherical or closed universe, positive curvature. Or 3. A hyperbolic or open universe, negative curvature. In other words, the universe could be positively curved, like a sphere. The universe could be negatively curved, like a saddle. The universe could be flat, like a sheet of paper. 360. In a flat universe, Euclidean geometry, space, applies at the very largest scales. This means parallel lines will never meet, and the internal angles of a triangle always add up to exactly 180 degrees, just like you're used to. But in curved universes, whether finite or infinite, things get weird. 361. As of 2018, the simplest version of the inflationary theory, an extension of the Big Bang theory, predicts that the density of the universe is very close to the critical density, and that the geometry of the universe is flat, like a sheet of paper. 362. The WMAP spacecraft can measure the basic parameters of the Big Bang theory, including the geometry of the universe. If the universe were flat, the brightest microwave background fluctuations, or spots, would be about 1 degree across. If the universe were open, the spots would be less than 1 degree across. If the universe were closed, the brightest spots would be greater than 1 degree across. 363. Recent measurements, circa 2001, by a number of ground-based and balloon-based experiments, including MAT/TOCO, Boomerang, Maxima and DESI, have shown that the brightest spots are about 1 degree across. Hence, the universe is known to be flat to within about 15% accuracy prior to the WMAP results. WMAP has confirmed this result with very high accuracy and precision. This was confirmed in 2013. Notation: observe the following picture on the right. It is another picture of the holometer. 364. When cosmologists say that the universe is flat, they are referring to space, the universe and its parallel siblings of time past. However, for them, spacetime is not flat. It can't be. Einstein's general theory of relativity says that matter and energy curve spacetime, and there are enough matter and energy lying around to provide for curvature. 365. In other words, the universe, as in space itself, is flat but spacetime is not. This declaration demands that it be beyond a shadow of a doubt. But when we consider various aspects like spacetime curvature and topologies with a sensitive quantum spacetime measuring tool called the holometer, the question of three-dimensional space comes into play in favor of a two-dimensional shape. 366. The job of the holometer is to be able to detect holographic fluctuations in spacetime. In other words, it is supposed to check for pixels found in the universe at the smallest levels, smaller than a proton. This is called Huygens theory, named after Craig Huygens, particle astrophysicist. 367. As of December 3, 2015, after a year of data collection, the holometer has ruled out Huygens' theory of a pixelated universe to a high degree of statistical significance, 4.6 sigma. The study found that spacetime is not quantized at the scale being measured. 368. It's like something out of the movie, The Matrix. The only thing about all of this is that it is real. The theories are real, and so are the observations. And if the theories are real, then our perceptions concerning shapes like balls, spheres, and curvatures can be illusions and perceptions like I discussed in Chapter 12. Illusions similar to high-tech video space games like Mass Effect, StarCraft, Star Wars, Halo, and Star Trek, where we see balls shaped like spheres called planets on a flat two-dimensional screen. Is it any wonder why there is such a thing as the philosophy of perception and discussions concerning René Descartes' Meditations, and his Cartesian doubt? 369. Huygens' theory was proven correct. It coincided with the 2013 confirmation of the universe as being flat like a sheet of paper. However, they maintain that they are still not sure. But for now, the similarities of the two would just have to wait. But while we are waiting, I find it rather very interesting that the theory of a holographic universe, and our world, for that matter, came about at the same time in 2014 to 2015 that astronomers and physicists confirmed a flat universe in 2013. I suppose they were seeking confirmation. Since the universe is flat, and possibly holographic, then what are the true dimensions of the Earth and space? 370. We know the universe is flat. We also know that it is not a hologram or pixelated matrix like a HD television set, at least for now. We know that different shapes exist. We also know that although spacetime curvatures exist, we also know that it exists on a sheet, a flat sheet. 371. Having a flat universe does not affect the shape of the firmament or dome at all. Because if that was the case, then spherical balls that cause curvatures in spacetime would not exist according to mainstream. So therefore, by reasonable deduction, a flat universe doesn't cancel out a domed Earth. A domed Earth is like a glass snow globe. A snow globe is half a globe. The surface inside the globe is flat, while its world is rounded, or circumscribed, by the glass protecting the contents inside. The other half of the globe does not exist, it is the bottom. And that bottom can go on forever from the perspective of the little figurines inside the domed globe. A globe can also be placed on an outstretched sheet, causing curvature. 372. Hence outer space is really a whole lot of inner space instead. Our sheet, the firmament dome, becomes the center of the universe because it is the universe. And since the dome circumscribes the Earth as postulated in chapter 3 and 17, the Earth and all contained in it, under it, as in its oceans, and above it, is all that is and all that will ever be. The Earth and its firmament is the stretched cosmos expanding. The Earth doesn't occupy the cosmos occupies the Earth and her firmament dome. And as a result of that occupation, the universe appears to be the thing that is expanding, when in reality it may be the Earth that is expanding. 373. NASA denies an expanding Earth, claiming, Earth is not expanding, as some scientists had previously speculated, as of 2011. However, as of 2015, Science Direct claims that it is expanding, and they have a number of empirical evidence to show for it, including, but not limited to, plate tectonics. 374. If the Earth is not expanding, then you would have to believe that it is the universe that is expanding instead. But if that was the case, then you would have to disprove the majority that claims that the universe is not expanding as they once thought it was. And if you do that, then you just might have to concede to an expanding Earth, firmament or dome. 375. In other words, since according to some, one is expanding, the other is not. But to others, the other is expanding while the prior is not. Perhaps the two are expanding. An expanding universe makes no difference to a flat earther since we believe the firmament is the universe, and if that is the thing that is expanding then so is the Earth, since the firmament is attached to the Earth. In other words, both are infinite, and a flat universe demonstrates this. This expansion may be due to Earth's overspreading sheet. 376. A number of biblical verses indicate this. 377. In other words, a flat two-dimensional universe, Euclidean space, which contain finite dimensions of length and width, and three-dimensional spaces, which contain length, width and height, can be fixed and set at any infinite or finite distances to allow for measure and limits, but can also allow for limits that do not exist. Hence, the expansion. 378. It allows curved space, which is often referred to as spatial geometry that is not flat, for flat space, described as Euclidean geometry, to exist. Hence a flat universe with a flat expanding infinite domed Earth plane is not difficult to comprehend. If you are familiar with integrals and Gauss's law, then you should be able to understand the mathematics for an infinite Earth, as mentioned prior. 379. As we have seen, Gauss's law, and his mathematical physics with alleged gravitational forces are examined in reference to an infinite Earth in Chapter 10. 380. I am convinced that there is more to NASA than meets the eye. Moreover, if the Earth was truly proven to be flat and infinite, then NASA, and every other space agency, would literally be laughed out of the business, a multi-billion-dollar business. Their business would crumble, and they would have to admit that perhaps there is a God, and that this God created our Earth flat and infinite. Moreover, astronomical, astrophysical, the theoretical sciences and every subcategory itself would have to admit to the validity of the scriptures. This is something I believe they would never do, much less admit to. There's just simply too much at stake. Notation: Hilbert space, named after David Hilbert, generalizes the notion of Euclidean space. It extends the methods of vector algebra and calculus from the two-dimensional Euclidean plane and three-dimensional space to spaces with any finite or infinite number of dimensions. It's essentially just an infinitely dimensional vector space. A Hilbert space is an abstract vector space possessing the structure of an inner product that allows length and angle to be measured. Furthermore, Hilbert spaces are complete. There are enough limits in the space to allow the techniques of calculus to be used. From Chapter 18, Euler's Identity, Orbital Trajectories, OCP and PMP. 381, in a paper entitled The Continuation from a Flat to a Round Earth Model in the Coplanar Orbit Transfer Problem, the authors Max Cerf, Thomas Haberkorn and Emmanuel Trillat discuss the problem of minimization of the fuel consumption for the coplanar orbit transfer problem. Under the section, The Round Earth Model and the Optimal Control Problem. 382. As we have learned in Chapter 7, again, we see the words, transference, convergence and transfiguration being used. Other keywords used are orbit transfer problem, optimal control problem, OCP, Pontryagin maximum principle, PMP, shooting method, continuation. In the paper, they transfer, converge and transfigure the Earth mathematically for the saving of fuel consumption by using Euler's equation results. A consumption that is flown in high-thrust orbit transfer that we furthermore restrict to be coplanar. The resulting numerical continuation process thus provides a new way to solve the problem of minimization of fuel consumption for the coplanar orbit transfer problem. The problem involves solving shooting calculations, as in initial takeoffs, orbits and trajectories, all this on a coplanar path. 383. Coplanar, another keyword found in the paper that we should all focus upon. What does the term coplanar mean? The definition of the word means lines. Lines and line segments that lie on the same plane, and consequently space, are considered coplanar lines. 384. There exist various numerical methods to solve such a problem, that they usually separate them in two classes, direct and indirect methods. Direct methods consist in discretizing the optimal control problem in order to rewrite it as a parametric optimization problem. Then a nonlinear large-scale optimization solver is applied. The advantage of this approach is that it is straightforward and is usually quite robust. The main drawback is that, because of the discretization step, those methods are computationally demanding in that they are not very accurate in general when compared to the indirect approach. Indirect methods are based on the Pontryagin maximum principle, PMP, that is a set of necessary conditions for a candidate trajectory and control strategy to be optimal. The idea is to use those necessary conditions to reduce the search of a solution to the search of the zero of the so-called shooting function. Indirect methods are also called shooting methods in this context. 385. Pontryagin maximum principle, PMP, is used in optimal control theory to find the best possible control for taking a dynamical system from one state to another, especially in the presence of constraints for the state or input controls. Hence, discretizing and PMP go hand in hand together. The PMP was formulated in 1956 by the Russian mathematician Lev Pontryagin and his students. 386. They use the principle of the PMP by discretizing the flat Earth model into a curved Earth model in order to solve the optimal control problem and the orbital transfer problem. They freely admit this. 387. In order to solve the problem of optimal control, a Cartesian coordinate system must be used. 388. Optimal control deals with the problem of finding a control law for a given system such that a certain optimality criterion is achieved. A control problem includes a cost functional that is a function of state and control variables. An optimal control is a set of differential equations describing the paths of the control variables that minimize the cost function. The optimal control can be derived using Pontryagins' maximum principle, a necessary condition also known as Pontryagins' minimum principle or simply Pontryagins' principle, or by solving the Hamilton-Jacobi-Bellman equation, a sufficient condition. 389. However, using Cartesian coordinates only causes problems for those who insist that the Earth is a globe. So, the change must take place in order to fit their prepositional math and spherical Earth model. The convergence and transfer must be obtained if the optimal control problem is to be solved. The problem can only be solved if they assume that the Earth is spherical in shape. And in order to this they created the PMP as mentioned above. 390. The model that we use for the coplanar orbit transfer problem is the following. Assume that the Earth is spherical with center O and consider an inertial geocentric frame, O, I, J, K. Since we consider the coplanar orbit transfer problem, we assume that the whole trajectory lies in the plane O plus Ri plus Rj. Instead of Cartesian coordinates, we next use polar coordinates whose definition is recalled. The definition is the mathematical expression they use. They recall the expression and set it. 391. After said conversion and set in, they define the flight path angle by once again using the Cartesian system. Then, the control system is written in cylindrical coordinates. The optimal control problem under consideration then consists in steering the control system from an initial configuration to some final configuration that is either of the form. 392. The conditions mean that the satellite has to enter a specified orbit at a given point of it. The conditions mean that the satellite must be steered to a final elliptic orbit of energy kF E0 and eccentricity EF, without fixing the entry point on that orbit. 393. Under the section called Simplified Flat Earth Model, the paper demonstrates how they convert the simplified flat Earth model gradually and continuously into the globe model. 394. The motion of a vehicle in a flat Earth model with constant gravity is governed by the control system. After said simplification, they must change their coordinates from a flat plane to a curve. It is admitted that it happens that OCP, flat can be explicitly and nearly analytically solved by applying the PMP. 395. It should be understood that such a control system is achieved by, according to the paper, corresponding diffeomorphism, such that f, x, h, vx, vh equals r, phi, v, gamma. For the control, the transformation from cylindrical to Cartesian is achieved. 396. They calculate mathematical expressions toward this continual gradual conversion from a flat Earth to a spherical Earth, and from a gravitational constant on a flat Earth to a gravitational variable, also from a flat Earth model. Hence, they make a first continuation on the parameter λ1, keeping λ2 equals 0, passing from λ1 equals 0, flat Earth model with constant gravity, to λ1 equals 1, flat Earth model with variable gravity, and then a second continuation, keeping λ1 equals 1, passing from λ2 equals 0 to λ2 equals 1, modified flat Earth model, equivalent to the initial round Earth model. 397. They admit to the work as preliminary. Many questions remain open, and from this point of view our work should be considered as preliminary. 398. They also admit that it is very probable that one may encounter some difficulties, as in any continuation process, due to the intricate topology of the space of possible continuation paths, this space being not always arcwise connected. 399. Typology is the mathematical study of geometric properties and spatial relations unaffected by the continuous change of shape or size of figures. 400. Since typology is the application of unchanging properties and spatial relations, then why the choice of change to begin with? 401. Upon this instance many would be quick to say that they do this because the use of a linearized model of a nonlinear event exists, where the result are minuscule in change to the data but severely complicate the math. In other words, why do this if it's going to complicate the math for no benefit? That alone can tell you that the Earth is spherical. Yes, that much is accurate, but lines remains parallel because cylinders are flat. Moreover, traditional views are still used in elementary treatments of geometry, but the advanced mathematical viewpoint has shifted to the infinite curvilinear surface, and this is how a cylinder is now defined in various modern branches of geometry and topology. 402. Even Euler's 6DOF reveals this. The 6DOF, Euler angles, block implements the Euler angle representation of 6 degrees of freedom equations of motion, taking into consideration the rotation of a body fixed coordinate frame, xb, yb, zb, about a flat Earth reference frame, say y, z. Hence, the shape of the Earth can indeed be flat covered by a dome. 403, and then there are atmospheric vibrations. 404. A study by scientists at Kyoto University and the University of Hawaii at Manoa has shown that the Earth's entire atmosphere vibrates in a manner that greatly resembles the vibrations of a ringing bell. Where do these vibrations come from? What causes them? 405. CO2 absorbing an incoming infrared energy of photon causes the CO2 molecule to vibrate. 406. Can such a sound and vibration come from a dome-enclosed Earth? Can tangible manifestations often left as evidence of trespass, even from so intangible substance, be left without further scrutiny? For example, where do our carbon dioxide emissions go? Only about 50% of the CO2 from human emissions remains in the atmosphere. The remainder is approximately equally split between uptake into the land biosphere and into the oceans. 407. However, while hydrogen and helium make up most of the gases in interstellar space, tiny traces of other elements such as carbon, oxygen and iron also exist. But since the majority of CO2 is left trapped, or enclosed if you will, in Earth's firmament, is it possible that such an oval-shaped enclosed system is responsible for the given behaviors of CO2 molecules in reference to their vibrations? The answer to that question is, yes. 408. Flat earthers claim that the dome itself is made up of some unseen type of impenetrable glass force. A covering, a rakia, which means an expanse, a visible arch of the sky, as described in Chapter 3. If it is an unseen impenetrable glass, then perhaps the vibrations are due to CO2 molecules bouncing off the flat Earth firmament dome. 409. Can an heterogeneous mixture be indicated? 410. A heterogeneous mixture contains two or more ingredients or phases. The phases might be at least two solids, liquids, or gases, or a solid-liquid, suspension, liquid/liquid, emulsion, gas/liquid, aerosol, or gas/solid, smoke. Different phases mix together but are physically separate. 411. If we were to consider a heterogeneous causing a separation of atmosphere and water, like when oil and water are combined, that do not mix evenly, but instead form two separate layers, is it not possible or at least feasible that the components or elements that make up said heterogeneous are indeed made up of a two-layer separation of atmosphere and water? The answer to that question is, yes. 412. Hence the different layers of Earth's atmosphere. The clouds and the sky are said to be at an average height of 6,500 to 20,000 to 22,000 miles high above the Earth. Earth's atmosphere is said to be 300 miles thick, from the ground to the top, with most of it within 10 miles of the surface. As mentioned prior, there are 5 main layers to this atmosphere. Working our way up from ground level, we have the troposphere, which is 0 to 25 kilometers, 0 to 7 miles high, the stratosphere 25 to 50 kilometers, 7 to 31 miles high, the mesosphere 50 to 80 kilometers, 31 to 50 miles high, the thermosphere 80 to 700 kilometers, 50 to 440 miles high, and the exosphere 700 to 10,000 kilometers, 440 to 6,200 miles high. 413. By makeup, we all know that water is made up of 3 atoms, 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. The universe or space itself is made up of a plasma of hydrogen and helium, as well as electromagnetic radiation, magnetic fields, neutrinos, dust, and cosmic rays. But out of this makeup, helium and hydrogen make up 99.9% of known matter in the universe, according to encyclopedia.com. Even so, there is still about 10 times more hydrogen than helium in the universe. Oxygen, the third most common element, is about 1,000 times less abundant than hydrogen. Electrons represent only 0.0005 of mass. 414. Hydrogen, when in its pure state, separated from water, is an odorless colorless gas. Hydrogen can also exist in plasma form called hydrogen plasma. The plasma state can be contrasted with the other states, solid, liquid, and gas. And when particles from the solar wind are excited by the Earth's magnetic field lines, they can also form a plasma. Hence, heterogeneity may be at play here, separating the atmosphere, the lower parts of the firmament dome with its higher divisional layers of atmospheric conditions, with what is outside the dome, or as it is commonly called the cosmos. To flat earthers, the dome is the actual universe of expanse or rakia, where the sun and moon exist rotating and in perpetual circular motion around the flat Earth. 415. With this understanding in mind, modern scientists are now claiming that the moon is in our very own atmosphere. For all intent and purposes, the moon is, more than likely, located in the exosphere, which lies between 440 to 6,200 miles just above the thermosphere, and not 238,900 miles away. For 16, hence, an arc of trajectory is not so much dependent only upon an oval-shaped dome, or firmament, in so much as they are more concerned with the dip during velocity from point A to point B, while attempting to fly by circular moving objects like our moon, the planets, wandering stars, and various orbital asteroids. From Chapter 19, Images of the Blue Marble? For 17, NASA claims that the images of a complete Earth are from only 2 photographs supposedly taken from outer space from 1972 and 2015. For 18, according to an article in Quartz, pulling his iPhone out of his pocket at a conference's cocktail reception, Robert Simmons performs a parlor trick few can match. He shows the phone's lock screen. Up pops the image of planet Earth that is familiar to millions, the default image on the first iPhone, which was dropped from Apple's mobile operating system only in 2012, to the dismay of many. "That's one of mine," he says. As it turns out, much of what one might assume about this beautiful image is not true. It wasn't commissioned or paid for by Apple. It isn't actually a photograph of Earth. And that blackness surrounding it? That's not space, either. For 19, images of the Earth may seem commonplace, but there are actually very few pictures of the entire planet. The problem, Simmons said, is all the NASA Earth-observing satellites are in low Earth or geostationary orbit, meaning none of them are far enough away to see a full hemisphere. The most familiar pictures of the entire Earth are from the 1960s and 1970s Apollo missions to the Moon. For 20, as realistic as it looks, the image is a composite of 4 months of light data collected in 2,300 kilometers wide bands as NASA's Terra satellite orbited from pole to pole, and the Earth rotated beneath it. That data was then stitched together and applied to the surface of a digital ball, then modified in Photoshop. For 21, Simmons also cites, there are numerous fakeries in his image. The atmosphere is Photoshop blur. Some of the clouds are collaged together using Photoshop's clone tool to cover gaps in the satellite's coverage. The black area around the Earth is not the void of space. It is simply a background of black color that Simmons placed the Earth on top of. This is standard practice, Simmons says. Most actual photographs of the Earth, including the Apollo images, present the planet on a black background. For 22, today Simmons is a senior data visualization engineer at Planet Labs, a commercial Earth observation company in San Francisco. Prior to moving in 2014, he was employed as a senior program analyst at Goddard Space Flight Center, where he was affiliated with the Climate and Radiation Laboratory and the NASA Earth Observatory. While serving as a lead data visualizer and information designer at this division of NASA, Simmons is most notable for his visualization of the Western Hemisphere of planet Earth. Well known as the Blue Marble, this image that would become the default wallpaper on the first iPhone in 2007. Furthermore, in Simmons' field of information visualization, through his work with NASA, he strove to help people better understand how the Earth works. For 23, NASA admits to the fakery. In 2002, NASA scientists and visualizers stitched together strips of brand new data, in natural color, collected over 4 months from the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer, or MODIS, instrument aboard Terra. For 24, so, the only supposedly real images we have of the Earth are the 1972 and 2015 photographs. But are they truly legit? According to NASA, this series of images, the 2015 photograph, was captured by NASA's Earth Polychromatic Imaging Camera, EPIC, a 4-megapixel CCD camera and telescope on the Discover satellite. A million miles away, NOAA's Discover satellite is the nation's first operational satellite in deep space. For 25, notice the citation specifically says that the image was taken a million miles away. The size of the land mass, according to what we have learned above, should be smaller when taken from such a great distance, as per a metabunk argument and rebuttal. But instead, we can clearly see North and Central America. Shouldn't the land mass shrink considerably, as demonstrated by the metabunkers? But yet, they are practically the same in size as the 2002 faked image that was stitched together from low Earth orbit, LEO, into one composite image over a period of months. For 26, similarly, when we compare the 1972 Blue Marble image that allegedly depicts Africa, Antarctica, and the Arabian Peninsula. Español, La Canica Azul, taken from only 18,000 miles away, we can again see clearly the discrepancies of Earth's land mass sizes. Now picture, if you will, the North and South American continents captured instead. They will relatively appear big at only 18,000 miles away. Now, fast forward into the year 2015. When we do, we will discover and notice that both North and Central America still appear huge, even when taken from a million miles away. Why is this so? Answer: because they are really in LEO. For 27, even Google Earth is at LEO at 370 miles above. Hence, the admitted statement in the following short video of how Google Earth, funded by the CIA, utilizes a flat Earth surface and magically turns it into a CGI round ball image of the Earth. For 28, this is how they faked it in LEO. They were not 139,000 miles away as they mentioned in the video. You can clearly see that they were in LEO. The image and photograph of the Earth was taken through a small circular window and cropped to give the appearance of distance at 139,000 miles away, when in reality they were only just a few miles away in LEO, unable to penetrate the Van Allen radiation belts. NASA, in another video, actually admits that they have never gone through the Van Allen belts due to its dangerous radiations. Moreover, the pictures remind us of how I was able to fake a ball Earth using a flat coin, a quarter to be exact, in Chapter 8. For 29, as time passed, 3 years to be exact, they became more proficient in staging the illusion of space flight outside the Van Allen radiation belts. Hence, providing us with the illusionary photo of the blue marble, allegedly taken from space at 230,000 miles away. See the link to the actual video in the description box below. It is 46:58 long. The information and the photos that I have provided can be found between the 34:00 and 46:58 minute mark into the video. Or, you can read the actual chapter, chapter 19 to be exact, from my website. Notation: see also the following video as mentioned in number 427 in description box below. From chapter 20, The Great Cosmic Reset, Astronomy, Its Past and Present History of Mysticism, Hermeticism, the Kabbalah and Esotericism. For 30, in chapter 3, we read and saw through illustrations what the ancients believed the Earth to be in reference to its shape and realm. But as we have learned in our chronology, many began to reshape the Earth and its position relative to the Sun, changing the Earth from a flat geocentric realm to a round globed heliocentric model. It was to be the Great Cosmic Reset. A doing away with the old philosophical religious concepts, its conceptual mathematical principles and equations. Hence, accepting a concept based upon a new mathematical approach based upon various mystical and magical sciences of the past, dating back to Hermes Trismegistus. For 31, Hermes Trismegistus, from ancient Greek Rho mu tau rho iota sigma mu gamma iota sigma tau omicron, Hermes the thrice greatest, classical Latin, Mercurius ter maximus, is a legendary Hellenistic figure that originated as a syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. He is the purported author of the Hermetica, a widely diverse series of ancient and medieval pseudepigraphical texts that lay the basis of various philosophical systems known as Hermeticism. For 32, a survey of the literary and archaeological evidence for the background of Hermes Trismegistus, in the Greek Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth, may be found in Bull, Christian H. 2018. The tradition of Hermes Trismegistus, the Egyptian priestly figure as a teacher of Hellenized wisdom. Leiden, Brill, pages 33-96. For 33, Hermes was credited with tens of thousands of highly esteemed writings, from both Egypt and Greece, suggesting a shared cultural tradition between the two in the man. And while the Italian Renaissance believed Hermes to be an Egyptian priest, it is possible that the Corpus Hermetica was actually written by a collective of unknown authors who were Platonistic and Stoic Greeks. For 34, the Corpus Hermetica, or Hermeticum, is the most widely known Hermetic text. It has 18 chapters, which contain dialogues between Hermes Trismegistus and a series of other men. It contains the 7 principles for self-mastery. The first chapter contains a dialogue between Poimandres and Hermes. Poimandres teaches the secrets of the universe to Hermes. In later chapters, Hermes teaches others, such as his son Tat and Asclepius. It was first translated into Latin by Marsilio Ficino, 1433-1499, whose translation set off the Hermetic revival in the Renaissance. These principles were written thousands of years ago, before any modern science verified their unusually accurate and esoteric claims. 435. These teachings are contained in the various writings attributed to Hermes, the Hermetica, which were produced over a period spanning many centuries, circa 300 BCE to 1200 CE, and may be very different in content and scope. This school of thought in the past, and during the Renaissance, became known as Hermeticism or Hermetism. 436. The Hermetic tradition represents a non-Christian lineage of Gnosticism, which is the name for a variety of ancient religious ideas and systems dating back to the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. The surviving writings of Hermeticism were lost to the Western world after classical times but survived in the Byzantine libraries. 437. In the 15th century, the letters were rediscovered and translated into Latin by the court of Cosimo de' Medici, yes, grandfather to Lorenzo de' Medici, the patron of Leonardo da Vinci and several other Renaissance artists. These letters were so influential during the time that they acted as a catalyst in the development of Italian Renaissance thought and culture. 438. Inspired by this wave of innovation, these timeless principles were resurrected again by the Freemasons and showed up in the teachings of the American revolutionaries. Through effort of preservation and excavation we are able to get look into our philosophical past and a once great tradition, which lead to an overall greater understanding of the universe, our place in it, and catalyzed the Italian creative Renaissance, influenced the American revolutionaries, and now shows up in much of modern-day personal growth media. 439. Moreover, in addition, the doctrines of Hermeticism are compatible with much of modern science. Plus, these laws of the universe can be seamlessly integrated into a wide range of different religions, as well as being compatible with atheistic perspectives. 440. Mathematics was promoted in the Renaissance by the rediscovery of the works of ancient mathematicians and the influence of Plato, who had emphasized the importance of mathematics in explaining the universe. Renaissance magic was the preserve of an intellectual elite from all over Europe. Hermetic magic had become fused with alchemical thought into a single intellectual framework. Humans, who it was believed also had that spark of divinity within, could use magic, especially mathematical magic, to understand and dominate the world of nature or to employ the powers of nature for beneficial purposes. It was likely that Hermeticism inaugurated the shift in consciousness that made the scientific revolution possible. 441. Even within the microscopic world of quantum physics, QP, and its various mechanics, the philosophical principles in Hermetic thought of collectivity in reference to the theory of everything, as in the all mentality of totality of principalities concerning religion, science, the cosmos, and every individual can also be found within this minuscule world. 442. Michio Kaku stated that quantum theory is mirrored from the Kabbalah and Zohar. Proof of Kaku's statement can be viewed in the following video. To see the video, see link in description box below. 443. Similarly, even the Quantum Gravity Research Institute admits to their world of string theory and so forth as occultish, like a New Age movement of sorts, though they do not want to call it that because it sounds too religious. But that is what it mirrors, a collective oneness, citing, when humanity discovers the theory of everything, it will usher in a new age of prosperity. 444. Modern scientists insist that there is a connection between that of the mystic and that of the quantum theorist. Mystical worldviews supposedly based on scientific ideas have been promoted in many recent books offering spiritual succor. In some, the reader is offered a kind of pantheistic cosmos in which personal identity merges with the infinite and is thus immortal. 445. The 3D world we experience is a kind of illusion, with the underlying reality being 2D. Argentinian physicist Juan Meldacena, working in the U.S., showed that this idea has strong support from superstring theory, which is considered by many physicists to be the best candidate for the ultimate theory of everything. 446. It can also be seen that, though persecuted by the Church, men like Galileo, Copernicus and Newton was highly influenced by the basic doctrinal tenets of Christianity. They all saw Christ, the Son of God, as their central figurehead, centered in the universe with the synchronization of the sun and sun in the middle of the solar system, unmoving and unchanging like the sun. They considered it their divine math. 447. Another Hermetic occultist was Giordano Bruno. Bruno was a Dominican friar, philosopher, poet, mathematician, cosmological theorist and a Hermetic follower. History tells us that his works influenced Newton, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, Arthur Schopenhauer, Gilles Deleuze, and Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling. Moreover, during his time of isolation, Newton was greatly influenced by the Hermetic tradition with which he had been familiar since his undergraduate days. While Copernicus was influenced by Aristarchus of Samos and Martianus Capella. Later, Johannes Kepler, who also influenced Newton, was influenced by Copernicus, Tycho and Pythagoras. 448, Pythagoras continued to be regarded as a great philosopher throughout the Middle Ages, and his philosophy had a major impact on scientists such as Copernicus, Kepler and Newton. Pythagorean symbolism was used throughout early modern European esotericism, and his teachings as portrayed in Ovid's Metamorphoses influenced the modern vegetarian movement. 449, Western esotericism, also known as esoterism, and sometimes called the Western mystery tradition, adopted these ideas. It is a term scholars use to categorize a wide range of loosely related ideas and movements that developed within Western society. The earliest traditions that later analysis labeled as forms of Western esotericism emerged in the Eastern Mediterranean during late antiquity, where Hermeticism, Gnosticism and Neoplatonism developed as schools of thought distinct from what became mainstream Christianity. 450, Hermeticism and esotericism gave birth to many religious concepts, movements and scientific organizations. It gave birth and/or influenced the likes of Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, occultism, the Theosophical Society, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, spiritual science, modern paganism, Wicca, the counterculture of the 1960s and the New Age movement of the present, which began in the 1970s. They even have a foundation dedicated to Hermetic ideologies. The Giordano Bruno Foundation, German, Giordano Bruno Stiftung, is a non-profit foundation based in Germany that pursues the support of evolutionary humanism. It was founded by entrepreneur Herbert Steffen in 2004. The Giordano Bruno Foundation is critical of religious fundamentalism and nationalism. 451, good math was turned into the pseudo-scientific practice that we see today, in order to fit their narrative of how they saw, and still see, the shape of our Earth and universe. They will defend their cause to the end. The mere fact that they are even considering the rejection of evolution and the Big Bang by individuals like myself to be that of a prejudice act, an intolerant attitude and abuse, is a blatant testimonial against me and those who uphold creationism, the flat Earth model and even theism. From Chapter 21, Space Agencies, what do they really see? 452, there are 78 space agencies. 453, what do these agencies have in common? Answer, allies and enemies, more of the first rather than the latter. For example, the ISS has been the most politically complex space exploration program ever undertaken. Launched in 1998 and involving the US, Russia, Canada, Japan, and the participating countries of the European Space Agency, the International Space Station is one of the most ambitious international collaborations ever attempted. 454, under international cooperation, the countries involved in the ISS program are the United States, NASA, Russia, Roscosmos, Canada, CSA, Japan, JAXA, and Europe. The ESA country members include Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. All of the European nations, including the outsiders like the United States, Canada and Japan, are in collaboration with each other. They are allies. Allies often keep to their secrecies. While Russia, outside of her cooperation with the ISS, and having her own launch capabilities, are committed to their own secrecies. The same holds true for China. China is committed to its secrecies as well. 455, out all the agencies, the ESA is the only agency that receives funding and support from its 22 different European countries, including the United Kingdom. Even Canada supports their endeavors, being an associate member. As mentioned above, many of these countries have their own space agencies, but they are all operated under a United Central Space umbrella, so to speak, the ESA. While the United States, Canada, Russia and Japan remain independent, but cooperative with each other. 456, out of the 78, only 15 have launch capabilities: Australian Space Agency, China National Space Administration, European Space Agency, Iranian Space Agency, Israeli Space Agency, Italian Space Agency, National Aerospace Development Administration, North Korea, Korea Aerospace Research Institute, South Korea, Indian Space Research Organization. Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, United States, Centre National d'études spatiales, France. State Space Agency of Ukraine, Roscosmos, Russia and the United States Space Force. 457, obviously, out of the 15, 10 are allies with one another. However, the United States manages to enjoy cordial, friendly and strategic relations with Russia and China. But tensions with North Korea and Iranian governments still persist. Being capable of launch mechanisms, what do they see when they travel up to space, beyond the Kármán line, which is 54 nautical miles, 62 miles or 330,000 feet above Earth's main sea level? Do they see the curvature of the Earth? Or do they see a flat Earth? 458, in chapters 6, 8, and 12, it was demonstrated and revealed that what we see courtesy of NASA's lenses and video live stream technologies are due to their constant reliance upon fisheye methods. And as we have learned, fisheye lenses distort images. They turn flat surfaces into curvatures. We also learned about perception and illusion. But what do the astronauts, cosmonauts and taconauts see? What do they see with their own naked eyes? Do they see a curved or flat Earth? 459, as we have already discovered in our previous chapters, they tell us that we can see the curvature of the Earth from a plane at 30,000 to 35,000 feet high. The following video from Facebook shows an altitude that is well above that. The video is filmed from 32,000 miles, not feet, but miles up, without a fisheye lens. Where is the curve? When you do see a curve, what you are seeing is an illusion. See chapter 12. The bending of light distorts an image. Light can bend around corners. In fact, light always bends around corners to some extent. This is a basic property of light and all other waves. The ability of light to bend around corners is also known as diffraction. Light can therefore bend around the corner of an object by riding the curved surface of the object. 460, any physics student knows that light travels in a straight line. But now researchers have shown that light can also travel in a curve, without any external influence. The effect is actually an optical illusion. 461, however, when it comes to planes, the illusion can also be seen due to them having double inserted windows to protect us from air pressure. The outside window is curved, the inner window is flat. Hence, the discrepancies by many. However, and this is most important, just because you see a curve doesn't mean that it is a sphere. Remember, quarters have curves but they are flat. 462, before Sputnik in 1957, the V-2 rocket test launch was performed in 1946. Moving fast forward, the Red Bull jump was 24.2 miles high. That is 127,776 feet. While back in 1984, Bruce McCandless floated from 317 kilometers, that's 171 nautical miles high. That's 1,040,024 feet high. While the ISS is 250 miles high, that's 1,320,000 feet high. See pictures in actual chapter on my website. Now, let us perform some quick checking up on these things. 463, on October 24, 1946, that's 12 years before NASA, researchers at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, strapped a DeVry 35mm movie camera into the nose of a V-2 rocket captured from the Nazis and blasted it toward space. The rocket shot straight up, 65 miles into the atmosphere before sputtering to a stop and descending back to Earth. 464, now, 65 miles is 343,200 feet. That is even higher than our 35,000 and 90,000 feet accomplishments in typical aviation, and much higher than Red Bull's jump from 127,776 feet. Now, they say, you should be able to detect a curvature from a plane at a cruising height of around 35,000 feet, but you need a fairly wide field of view, 60 degrees, and a virtually cloud-free horizon. But in a video from 1946 showing the V-2 rocket in space there is still no curvature of the Earth, not even at 343,200 feet high. This proves for a fact that the Earth, in the Red Bull video jump, is extremely distorted, showing curvature. It's actually pretty funny to me. 465, the 1946 video is funny too. What makes the video funny to me is when the commentator says, at the 127 mark into the video the following, quote, "Astonishingly, we can see the curvature of the Earth in this still, frozen, picture." Unquote. Really, where? Look at the pictures and the time played into the film. There is no curvature. That journalist must have been indoctrinated to the core of his brain and eyeballs. We do not see a curvature because the camera did not utilize a fisheye lens that NASA chooses to use today. For 66, a blogger, a collector, reported this about the DeVry camera used in 1946. The lens port is rather small, about 32 mm across, and so I cannot see much of the shutter blade. The best I can make out is that it is less than 180 degrees and more than 90 degrees. Remember, according to science you only need a 60 degrees field of view and a cloud-free horizon to see the so-called curvature. But yet at 90 degrees I still see no curvature in the film. That is because the camera showed the Earth for what it really is. Today, they all use fisheye lenses. Fisheye lenses were created in September 1923 and have a 180 degrees coverage. However, they began to be greatly utilized in the 1960s. For 67, another thing that I find extremely funny is the fact that some of my critics have actually asked me, why do I make a big deal out of the mechanisms of fisheye lenses? Some have even said, NASA doesn't use them, and if they do, it is only for specific occasions. However, this is not true. NASA admits to the distortion. Click the NASA link below for confirmation of this. I already covered these things extensively in chapters 6 and 8. It's just like I said, we are not seeing the Earth in all her glory. For 68, another interesting comparison are the similarities between space agencies. The China Rover animation Mars mission actually copies that of the United States. Are they all in this together, in cahoots? If so, this togetherness is similar to the Antarctic Treaty between nations that actually dislike each other. See Chapter 15. Anybody who'd believe the following YouTube video would believe anything. Just think about it. It's common sense. If both of these videos were part of a term paper someone would have been given an F for wonderful plagiarism. Moreover, where is the outcry from the United States against China for plagiarism? See videos in actual chapter or in description box below. For 69, Globe Earth believers will often cite, now, go and watch the cars go under the horizon. They claim that we can see cars drive under the horizon from bridges like the George Washington Bridge and the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Now remember, they are saying this, not me. Where is your 8-inch per mile curvature? It's all about perspective. The horizon will always be at eye level, no matter how far up you go. For 70, the pictures on the right are based upon facts. No bridge maker, railway trails that got laid down, highways that get paved/installed over hundreds of miles or canals use any Earth curve calculations to build these structures over distance. Globe Earth believers can try to project their view onto flat earthers, but they fail each and every time. Moreover, it's funny when people post these pictures trying to prove a curve when all camera lenses suffer from compression, especially when zoomed in. Even the human eye compresses luminosity. In other words, we are unable to see true dynamic range. It is a physical impossibility. For 71, however, as we have learned in Chapter 1, there is supposed to be a curvature every m superscript 2 times 0.799364 equals d, or in simpler terms m superscript 2 times 8 equals d. As written in Chapter 1, this means that for every mile of the distance between you and a second object, the curvature will obstruct 8 inches of its height. This is simply untrue, especially when we utilize cameras like the Nikon P900 or P1000 which can eliminate zoom compression. Hence, bringing things back into focus on a straight line when they supposedly went down or over the alleged curvature of the Earth. This alone demonstrates the absurdity of the globe Earth model and its Pythagorean mathematics. For 72, since it is to be considered unknowable as to what the astronaut, cosmonaut or the taikonaut sees with their own naked eyes when in LEO, we can rest assuredly and know that what they do see on a given particular day or night is due to the bending of light and eye compression. They also see the more plausible flat Earth liner plane model when in certain positions while in LEO. I am not referring to traveling heights, I am referring to a position while in a particular height, even from the ISS, as the pictures taken from Chapter 6 demonstrates. See Chapter 6. For 73, they see light bending, they admit to compression and/or a flat Earth plane, but what they choose to show us, whether from a LEO, or from a studio, is their trickery and illusion of distances persistent within every single streaming video shot and photographic imagery, utilizing their fisheye technologies. When utilizing a blue or green screen as spoken of in Chapter 11, video and photographic fisheye lenses are often greatly used, while astronauts, and the like, are seen in the foreground. For 74, and out of the 15 space agencies that have launch capabilities, all of them utilize fisheye lenses. Simply Google Russian fisheye cameras, or any country from the other 14 mentioned above, and you will notice that they all use fisheye lenses. They will never admit to seeing a flat horizon, even if they saw it for an extended amount of time. It simply does not fit with their version of science history, hermeticism, narrative or preconceived notions on the shape of the Earth. All chapters, bibliographies and citations in full can be found located at my website, theultimatereconciliationist.com, in the menu under the category entitled Flat Earth Articles. Thank you for watching this video. Yours truly, Reverend Thomas Perez.